Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto became a legend. When the seal broke and he opened his eyes, he had hoped to see his friends standing around him, welcoming him back to life. But now he's in a different time and all of his friends have long since passed away. Now the only thing he can do is put what he has been trained to be to good use and serve the galaxy from the shadows. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 10, I believe you were saying something? Location, Citadel. They ran out of Fist's office, back towards the club. As they got close to the door, Caden noticed something on his radar. Heads up, guys, we've got a lot of people waiting for us, he announced. I see it too, Gurus confirmed, checking his own radar. I'm seeing 20, no, make that 30 hostiles waiting for us. In his experience, that was never a good sign. Naruto swore. Are you kidding me? They really didn't need this shit right now. We're gonna get stuck in there if we try to fight through, Rex commented. He had been in enough firefights to know that the superior numbers would slow them down, even if they were able to break through. That depends on how we fight them, he said as he went through the door. Tajukage Bunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu, he shouted. A huge cloud engulfed them and the club. When it dissipated, the club was filled with clones, making the enemy both surprised and nervous. Kill them, the blonde ordered. The clones immediately jumped at the nearest target and began the killing. While the carnage went on around them, they kept moving. No wonder they called you the Kage no Guntai, Shadow Army, Ashley told the blonde as they ran out of the club. She had never seen someone create that many clones before, whether they could be touched or not. At best, the highest she had seen before this was 7. He scowled when he heard what she had said. I wish they had come up with a better nickname than that. At first, he didn't think it sounded all that intimidating. Now, he knew it was because his clones would drive anyone crazy. They did it to him. After that little show, it's definitely intimidating, Kaiden assured him. Not to mention a little scary. Every time the blonde did something like that, it only reinforced the stories about him. He was glad that most humans who had met him till now weren't sure if he was kidding or not. If they knew the truth, and he had a sinking suspicion that they would find out soon, he had no doubt the blonde was going to get really popular, real fast. Gaki, I think you're forgetting something, Kurama told his Jinchuriki, getting his attention. And what would that be? He asked, impatient. He wasn't sure how much time he had left and he wasn't going to let that Quarian die. You have no idea where these markets are? Kokuo asked drily. He stopped and began to mentally swear. Ever since he had gotten aboard the Citadel, he had been relying on Ashley and Kaiden to point him in the right direction. He made a mental note to find a map of the place, if he could. Hey, what's wrong? Rex asked him. They had all stopped behind him. I just realized that I have no freaking clue where to go, he answered in a growl. Someone else want to take the lead here? I know where the spot is supposed to be, Gurus told him. He knew the wards like the back of his hand. Then take the lead. The Turian nodded in acknowledgement and made his way to the front of the group. Once he was in front, they started running again. Taylai made her way to the meeting point. She was making her bet with this deal. Who knew that Memory Core had compromising information about somebody? She didn't. If my father was here, he would lecture me until next week, she thought to herself. And I'm pretty sure my mother would be laughing the entire time. But she stopped and remembered her mother wouldn't be laughing. She had died just before Taylai went on her pilgrimage. She shook herself out of that. She had to focus. When she got to the spot, a narrow side alley, there was no one there. Nervous, she placed a hand on her skirmisher pistol, feeling reassured by its feel. Just before she had started on her pilgrimage, she had built her pistol from the bottom up. It felt like a part of her. If all guns failed her, she could always rely on her skirmisher. Hey, a voice off to her side said. Turning that direction, she saw a Turian walking towards her. From out of the shadows, she saw a few Solarians and even a human, who looked like he was packing some heavy gear, judging by the armor he wore and weapons he carried. Come out. Did you bring it? The Turian asked her, his white markings standing out even under the red light. Where's the shadow broker? She demanded as the Turian came closer. Where's Fist? She had thought that she would be meeting with the shadow broker and Fist would be the one to introduce her. They'll be here, he assured her, tracing a talon over her neck. It sent chill throughout her body. Where's the evidence? Reaching over and slapping the talon away, she reached for her skirmisher. No way, the deal's off, she told him. Her parents didn't raise an idiot. She now knew that there was something up and odds were her life was on the line because of that. The Turian gave her one last look before looking over at the Solarians. He was about to raise his hand in a gesture that would have probably told them to start firing, when what looked like some sort of knife flew at him, forcing him to duck. Talai looked over at where the knife came from. A group of people were running towards them. A blonde-haired human was leading the charge, and if the second knife in his hand was anything to go by, he was the one who threw the first one. Kaiden, Ash, secure the precious cargo. He barked out orders as they started attacking. Gurus, provide them covering fire. Rex, take out the human. He went after the assassin. Come this way, please, the second human male, Kaiden, if she heard correctly, told her. Both he and the human woman ushered out of the way of the fight. Hey. I can take care of myself. She protested. She wanted to put a few bullets in the Turian herself. I'm sorry, ma'am, but your safety is our priority, the human female, Ash, apparently, replied. They pulled her behind a crate and made her crouch down. They joined the Turian by giving covering fire. They were able to take the Solarians who had come with the assassin. The Krogan charged straight at the heavily armored human, his fist wreathed in blue flames that showed he was a biotic. Throwing his fist out in a punching motion, he sent the human flying into the wall. As he slumped down to the ground in a daze, Rex pulled out his shotgun and fired once at his head. You should have been faster, the Krogan stated bluntly. He had been expecting a bit more of fight, considering the human had been carrying an uprising class LMG. The fight between the blonde human and the Turian assassin had been a rather short one, ending in the blonde's favor. He grabbed the arm that held the gun and twisted, making the Turian drop the gun. He kicked the Turian's leg hard, breaking it in the process, causing the assassin to fall. And finally, he grabbed the Turian by the head and twisted hard, snapping his neck. All in all, it took about 10 seconds. Is that everyone? He asked, scanning the area to make there weren't any other enemies. That's everyone, Rex confirmed, walking back over to him. A little boring, if you ask me. They had to have been amateurs. We were trying to save someone, Rex, Guristrilli told the Krogan. Not get into an all-out brawl. How's the precious cargo? The blonde human asked Kaiden and Ash. I'm fine, Talai remarked as she stood back up and walked towards him. And I have a name. It's Talai. She was a little annoyed. She could have handled herself and helped out in the fight. But she couldn't deny the fact that they saved her life, and she was grateful for it. Jonin Naruto Uzumaki, Systems Alliance, he replied. I was told that you had information that could prove that the Spectre agent Seren is a traitor. Yeah, I've got that information, she answered hesitantly. Her eyes flickered around, trying to make sure she could see them all. But how do I know you aren't here to kill me as well? Her hand drifted to her skirmisher. She could probably take out at least 2 of them before the others realized what she had done. Why would we go to the trouble of saving you from assassins just so we could kill you ourselves? Rex asked with blatant sarcasm. Doesn't make sense, especially since Fist had decided to send an Einherjar to make sure you would be dead. He looked back over at the dead human to emphasize his point. Keela, Fist really did want me dead, she thought in surprise. An Einherjar was someone to be feared in a fight. The popular saying was that if the shinobi were humanity's answer to the Asari commando, then the Einherjar were humanity's answer to the Krogan Battlemaster. If Rex had been just a little slower, he and the Einherjar would have gotten into a brawl that was very likely to wreck the area they were currently and quite possibly spill out to more public areas. I see your point, she conceded. What the hell is an Einherjar doing with a bunch of assassins? Kaiden asked, confused by the fact. If that emblem on his chest is any sign, I'd say he was a part of the blood pack, the Krogan answered, gesturing at the emblem in question. That would have made him one of the rogue ones, huh? If he's one of the disgraced, it's a good thing he's dead, fucking traitor, Ash said, spitting at the corpse. Everyone could hear the contempt in her voice as she scowled at the dead human. There's no need to insult the dead, Ash, Naruto told him, his tone a little sharp. Anyway, let's get back to the embassies and show Yudina what Talai has to offer. They formed up around her and proceeded to leave the supposed ambush site. The unit watched the target leave. It had arrived just after the fight had finished, so it stayed in the shadows. They didn't need its help. Once they were gone, it stayed in place. Additional threats were inbound. They were going after the target. They were most likely trying to ambush him while he retreated. Once it had their locations, it settled in and waited. The threats came into its range. It fired and the targets died. They looked around, trying to figure out where the shots were coming from. It kept firing, making sure to take out those who looked like they were about to figure it out. When it was done shooting, the bodies were littered all across the ground. The target was far away from now. It put the rifle away. Time to relocate. It would be gone before CSEC arrived at the scene. When he read the latest reports from his Omni tool in his office, Yudina turned to Anderson and gave him the evil eye. I can't believe you and Hackett convinced me to put his name forth as a Spectre candidate. He snarled. Have you seen the damage reports I've been getting? He's supposed to be a shinobi, not an Akimichi on a rampage because you talked about his weight. He had seen that once at a dinner rehearsal. It hadn't been pretty. It could have been worse, Anderson commented simply. He would have blown up over that comment had the door to the office not open, letting Naruto and his group walk in. Yo, we're back, the blonde greeted casually with a wave of his hand. And I've got what we need to prove Seren is a traitor and is linked to the Geth, he added when he saw the angry look on the ambassador's face. He had been on the receiving end of that look before, though he doubted that Yudina had the capacity to beat him to a bloody pulp like Tsunade or Sakura could, so he knew that giving the angry person good news would usually be enough to calm them down, and if that didn't work, it was either pleading for mercy or just simply running. The anger on Yudina's face disappeared when he heard that. It was replaced with hope tinged with an almost savage glee. Are you sure? He practically demanded. Nice save, Kaki, Kurama told Naruto. He had lost count of the number of times he had told the blonde not to say something, only for him to say it and get beaten up. He was very glad when Naruto had finally figured out how to deflect the anger, usually by giving Tsunade sake and telling Sakura how beautiful she was before making a quick exit. Thank you, he replied before looking over at the Quarian with them. Tell us what you have, Talai, he told her. She stepped forward, suddenly feeling nervous. My name is Talai Zora Naraya, she introduced herself. When I left the migrant fleet on my pilgrimage, I heard rumors of Geth. I was curious about them, since my people created them. So, I tracked a patrol of Geth to an uncharted world and waited for one of them to become separate from its unit. Then I disabled it and removed its memory core. Correct me if I'm wrong, ma'am, Anderson said to her. But don't the Geth fry their memory core when they died? It's a defense mechanism, right? You would be correct, sir, she told him. But please remember that my people created the Geth. If I'm quick, careful, and lucky, small caches of data can be saved sometimes. She lifted her arm, activating her Omni tool. Most of the core was wiped clean. But I managed to salvage something from the audio banks. She opened up the audio file. Eden Prime will be a major victory for us. Seren's voice rang out, filling the room with his voice. The beacon will bring us one step closer to finding the conduit. That's Seren's voice. Anderson said with an almost savage glee. This proves he was involved in the attack. Hang on, that's not all, Talai told him. Seren wasn't working alone. She tapped some buttons on her Omni tool, letting the file continue. Seren spoke again. But when he was done, someone else spoke. And one step closer to the return of the Reapers, a female voice said to Seren. But what if the council finds out? I have no doubt that if they find out, all I would have to do is say I'm innocent and they'll protect their precious, top specter without hesitation. They are quite predictable when it comes to things like that. How true that is, she agreed with a mocking laugh. As the file ended, they looked at her and then at each other. I don't recognize that other voice, the one talking about the Reapers, Yudina admitted. He had met many people during his time as an ambassador and he had a knack for remembering how someone spoke. So when he said he didn't recognize the voice, he also meant he didn't know who it was. What about the Reapers? Naruto asked. Was that an alien species I missed? Just how many species were out there in the galaxy? I don't think so, Isabu answered, looking over the memories of what he had read. You read about every species that the galaxy knows about. And I'm not seeing anything in here about Reapers. From what I could get out of the memory core, the Reapers were a hyper-advanced machine race that existed 50,000 years ago, Talai explained to him. The Geth believe that the Protheans were hunted to total extinction by the Reapers. Once they were done, they vanished. It sounds a little hard to believe, Yudina told her, not convinced. Well, apparently, the Geth revere the Reapers as the pinnacle of non-organic life, you could say almost like gods. And they believe that Seren knows how to bring them back. You know, that might explain what the beacon tried to shove into my head, Naruto said, getting everyone's attention. Perhaps it was trying to show me how the Reapers were killing the Protheans. All I know is that the council will just love this, the ambassador said heavily, rubbing his forehead like he was trying to get rid of a headache. He was going to get one from what came next. Anderson saw it differently. What's important is that those audio files prove that Seren is a traitor, he said. They could all see the satisfaction of being proven right on his face. The council can't try to protect him after hearing that. The captain is right, he agreed. We need to present this evidence to the council right away. What about the Quarian? Ashley asked. She hadn't meant to sound offensive, but Talai took it like that. My name is Talai. She snapped at the human. And I can help you, sir. She told Naruto, looking at him. Even though he couldn't see her eyes properly, he could tell that they were staring straight at him. Are you any good with that pistol? He asked, looking down at the gun she carried. I'm a decent shot, she admitted. You would have seen that if you had let me fight back in the alley. He had heard a lot of things like that back during the war. Some were true, but many fell short. And what happens if you lose the pistol? I took the required self-defense class in the migrant fleet before leaving on my pilgrimage, so I know how to take care of myself. But have you done anything that involved military training? She paused, thinking the question over. No, I haven't, she finally admitted. I see. He was silent for a few long seconds. Is there anything else you have to offer? Just because you're a supposed decent shot and you know some self-defense moves doesn't mean I'm letting you join my team. I'm good with tech, she stated proudly. If there was one thing she could be proud of, it would be that. And I supposed to know that how. The fact that I could pull the memory core out of a Geth should prove that I'm good with tech, she told him, a little insulted that he didn't believe her. And how am I supposed to know you actually did that? He asked, making her stiffen slightly. He needed a demonstration. If you're good with tech, then prove it. Fine, I will. She walked over to the computer the ambassador had been using ever since he had the office. I take it that this computer has some good security to prevent hacking. She asked Yudina. Of course, it does, he replied. What exactly are you? He never finished his question as the Quarian began typing at a rapid pace. It almost looked like her fingers were dancing across the keyboard. Actually, it had some good security to prevent hacking, she told him as she began looking through what the computer had. For the record, you might want to change your password to something a lot harder than the place you were born. He fought to keep the redness off his face, especially when everyone could see him. Thank you, now get off of that. He ordered her. She did so, turning off the computer as she walked back around to the group. And that's not all, she told Naruto. I can hack into an enemy's Omni tool and send them a virus that'll shut off their shields. I can get past any door that has a code and into any computer that has a password. You saw how I could do that last one, she added a bit smugly. Oh, I like her, Komei said from inside Naruto's head. She kinda reminds me of Fu. Ignoring the Biju, the blonde looked at the Quarian. Alright, I'm convinced, he told her. He could someone like her, especially when he was still trying to figure out the modern gadgets. Congratulations, you're on the team. Thank you. You won't regret it, she told him happily. I hope not, he replied, albeit with a smile. So, what do we do now? He asked Yudina and Anderson. Both Anderson and I will go ahead to get things ready with the council, Yudina answered his question. So that would get things rolling. Now he could focus on something that had been bugging him. Before you do that, I want to ask you and the captain something. He looked back at his group. Could you guys give us a minute? Sure. It's no problem, Kaiden told him. They all walked out of the room. And don't try to listen in. He shouted at them as the door closed behind him. Yudina rolled his eyes and Anderson smiled slightly at that. What is it you want to know, Naruto? He asked the blonde. He turned and they saw his face looked determined. How much did the Systems Alliance lie when they gave the council that detailed explanation, he asked, using air quotes to emphasize his point. They didn't look at each other, keeping their eyes on him. What do you mean by that, Commander Uzumaki? Yudina demanded, his tone guarded. I'm not as big of an idiot as I once was, Ambassador, he replied, crossing his arms with a scowl. As I said before, the only one who knew how the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu works better than me was the Nidaime Hokage. Both he and I knew that the memory passing ability was an important part of the Jutsu and yet, the council doesn't know this. So, I believe that the Alliance lied to them and that wasn't the only Jutsu the Alliance lied about. He stared them both down, daring them to say otherwise. Both Anderson and Yudina considered saying otherwise but the look they were getting advised it wasn't a good idea. You would be correct in thinking the Alliance lied to the council about some of the details concerning our jutsu. But we felt justified, the ambassador explained to him. They attacked us for accidentally breaking one of their laws and when peace was reached, they ordered us to tell them everything about the jutsu we used. We weren't going to spill all of our secrets to them after what had happened. So, we just gave them the basic details of most of the jutsu and left out the more powerful ones. The blonde lost the look. Thank Kami for that, he replied with a grin. For a while there, I had thought you guys had spilled all the beans. He was glad that they hadn't. If the council and the rest of the galaxy didn't know about the more powerful jutsu, like the Mangekyo Sharingan, it wouldn't give them further incentive to try and figure out how Churko works. In any case, you two should probably get going. You're right. Take a few minutes for you to collect yourself and give your team a chance to do the same, and then meet us in the tower. Both he and Anderson walked out of the room, going past Naruto's team. What was that about? Gurus asked as they walked back into the room. Just something I wanted to double-check, the blonde answered. All right, they want us to wait a couple of minutes before heading up to the tower. Guess that means I'm waiting by the elevators, Rex commented with a grunt. Why would you be doing that? Ashley asked him, curious. My species isn't the only in the galaxy that has both long lives and long memories, he answered shortly. Location, unknown. The assassins have failed, the matriarch told him, standing behind the chair of the helm. Fist is also dead. So, the humans now have the information, Seren said. It wasn't a question, since they both knew the answer to it. Yes. He fell silent. He had a feeling it would come to this. Anderson was never one to give up on finding dirt on him, especially when it was real. He could always count on the council to make sure he stayed in the clear. But he had a feeling that was going to end quite soon. We might as well watch the show, he finally said, standing up from the chair. Location, Citadel. Musashi, Palin said with a growl, glaring at the human standing on the other side of his desk, are you trying to get fired? I called you in this morning for your antics yesterday and now this. Why did he have to make it sound like it was his fault? It wasn't. I did my job. He replied, clenching his hand over his bukin's hilt. He saw the move and frowned in response. You caused a firefight in a warehouse. I didn't start it. What did? The warehouse security team. He almost couldn't believe him. A simple warehouse security team forced you to call for backup, which turned into a siege of the warehouse. If that whole event didn't get on the news, he would count himself lucky. Musashi folded his arms against his chest. There was nothing simple about that team. The kind of firepower they were packing belonged to a military group, a good one. The Turian stifled a frustrated snarl. It wouldn't have gotten him anywhere. All right, start at the beginning, he ordered. He did just that. He told his boss about the call, about how it was strange and short, and it directed him to the warehouse. When he got to the warehouse, he announced himself, but there was no one in the offices. It was the same in the warehouse. When he did meet up with the security, he introduced himself as CSEC, only to have them open fire. And even though he knocked out two and arrested the last, more showed and started shooting at him, forcing him to drag his arrestee to cover and return fire, leading to a stalemate that turned into chaos when his backup arrived. The cameras in the warehouse will attest to everything that happened, he finished up. Palin looked at him for a second before sitting back down in his chair. The records have vanished, he said. Musashi couldn't have heard that right. What? They're gone. His boss nodded. A warehouse's security cameras have been wiped clean. Yes, they have. His computer pinged, signaling he got a message. He read and swore underneath his breath. You must be joking, he said, loud enough for the human to hear him. That guard you arrested? She's being released. What? Why? He demanded. Orders from higher up. She'll be free to go. On what grounds? Immunity and unlawful arrest, he read off the message. Unlawful arrest? What kind of bullshit was that? They opened fire on me first. He had done everything by the book when he went into that warehouse. How could that be unlawful arrest? That's what you say, Musashi, Palin told him, taking his eyes off the computer. But with no evidence to support it, I can't agree with it. I have to release her. He scowled. This is bullshit. It was complete and utter bullshit. The Turian scowled back and pointed what seemed like an accusing finger at him. If you think there's evidence, Musashi, then go and find it. Otherwise my hands are tied here. He didn't like this any more than his subordinate did, but that didn't mean he was going to stand there and take criticism for doing his job. Fine, I'll do just that. He folded his arms and looked Palin in the eyes, daring him to refuse. Am I dismissed? Palin waved him off. Go and do your job, Musashi, he told him. But do it by the book. He turned around and headed for the door. I'll do the best I can. That's not what I said. He pretended not to hear that as he left the office and made his way back down to his desk. There were eyes on him as he sat down. Everyone there had been involved in the warehouse siege. They were probably waiting to hear the news. Rin came over with Shiromaru. Well? She asked, leaning against his desk. I'm not fired, he said. She smiled. Well, that's good. It's the only good news I've got. That guard arrest is being released. He said it loud enough for everyone in the bullpen to hear. The reactions were mixed, ranging from surprise to resignation. Rin was one of the surprised ones. Why? You had her dead to rights. It came from up on high. And there's no evidence to prove what happened to me. The evidence is gone. How could it be gone? Apparently, there weren't any camera recordings. He scowled at his computer. They're just gone. Jacobus, one of the senior detectives there, was walking by when he heard that. Welcome to Citadel politics, he told them both. If that guard was released, that only means the council wants her out. No use trying to figure out why. Rin eyed the Turian. Sounds like you've been through that before. He nodded briefly before looking at Musashi. My advice to you? Drop it. It's not worth wasting the time and effort to go after them. That wasn't Musashi. He might have been shanghaied into this mess. Another thing he was going to have to look at was that mysterious call, but he was in it now. Can't do that, Jacobus, he told him. I warned you. That was all he could do. While he walked away, Rin looked at Musashi. You need some help? She asked him. He considered it for a moment. Rin was a good partner when they worked together on cases. But those were normal cases. He had a feeling that he was about to plunge into was something not normal. Still, it wouldn't be smart to just dismiss her. Not right now, he said. I'll give you a call. I'll take that. I hoped you would. He felt a nose press against his hand. Rin, would you mind telling Shiromaru that I'm not going to give him treats? He asked without even looking down at his hand. The hound always did that. I would, she said with an amused look. But after I warned you the first time, I don't think I should. She always told people she was not responsible for how Shiromaru reacted when given treats. He frowned good-naturedly. Get him away, I gotta work. She did that, leading Shiromaru back to her own desk. As he looked at his computer, he got serious. Now it was time to figure out what the hell happened. Naruto and his team rode the elevator up to the Citadel Tower. They were trying to stay focused on what was coming next. But that was a little hard with the news flashes constantly droning on in their ears. Many colonial proposals are on hold until backers have some reassurance that human colonies will be adequately protected, the reporter finished, just in time for the doors to open. Gah, I'm beginning to hate those damn things, Ashley said in agitation as they walked out into the tower. She was beginning to feel the urge to pull out her gun and shoot the speakers. The only reason she didn't was because it would kill all the sound there. The music was bearable, she could listen to it. Yep, if there's one thing you come to hate about the Citadel, it's the elevators, Gurus agreed, having been in them many times. Really? Asked Naruto. I find them to be a good place for a nap. Anderson was up the staircase. He looked like he was waiting for them. Taylai looked at the blonde, surprised. You can sleep in those things? She asked. He shrugged his shoulders. It's not hard. You just have to figure out how to sleep standing up. You only figured out how to do that when your teammates found out what you were doing with your knights and staged an intervention, Kurama reminded him. Fat lot of good it did. And please remember where that got you. Of course, I remember where that got me. I see that constantly, he replied, a bit snidely. And please remember that what I did during those nights was necessary and it saved all of your lives. He's got you there, Madatabi commented. How do you learn how to sleep standing up? Kaiden asked him, bringing his attention back to the real world. You start by learning how to sleep in a chair, he replied with a straight face. He learned how to sleep standing up when Sakura, Sai, and Sasuke hit all the chairs. That led to an argument he didn't really want to remember. It ended with him kicking them out and not talking to any of them for nearly 3 weeks. The group walked up the stairs in silence. When they reached Anderson, the rest held back. You're just in time. Anderson told Naruto as he walked up. It's about to begin. The two of them continued up the stairs. They joined Yudina, who stood before the council. The council didn't look too happy to be standing there again. There wasn't a giant hologram of Siren looming over them all this time. We have already discussed this, Ambassador Yudina, Tavos said, again subtly sounding like a parent chastising a child. The council has found no evidence against Siren and the Geth. That's odd, Naruto said speaking before Yudina could. Because that's not what I saw. What are you doing? Yudina hissed out between clenched teeth. He had a plan here. He didn't need that screwed up. Giving you an opening, he replied in a whisper. He looked back at the council. Before I came here the first time, I had run into CSEC officer Gurus Vakarayan. He was telling his superior that he needed just a little more time to find proof that Siren was hiding something. However, his superior said that his investigation was over. What's your point? Spiratus asked, both a little impatient and annoyed. The last time this particular human had spoken, they had all but torn his evidence to shreds. In response, he insulted and mocked them. My point is that the time it took the Normandy to get from Eden Prime to the Citadel was relatively short. The ambassador here put in the petition that Seren removed from the Spectres probably as soon as he heard from Captain Anderson about what happened on Eden Prime. In response, you handed down the orders to have someone in CSEC to investigate Seren. But then when Yudina asked for a hearing, you agreed and gave the time of the hearing to all who needed to know. Within the very same day you had a CSEC officer try to investigate your top Spectre, he told them, keeping a steady tone and a calm expression. Are you implying something, Commander? Valerne asked him. What he is implying is that you gave a token gesture to investigating Seren, only to stop it, sweep it under the rug, and say that they couldn't find anything, Yudina said with a vicious gleam in his eyes, having caught the opening he was given. Had you actually tried to give CSEC time to investigate Seren, you would have set the hearing at a later date. Instead, you told the officer in charge of the investigation that it was over and hoped that he would listen to you. Thank Kami that Officer Garrus is a stubborn son of a bitch and stayed on the case like an Inyazuka and his hound on the hunt, Naruto commented. He looked up at the council. So tell me, do you play cover-up for all your Spectres, or is Seren just special? He asked with enough fake innocence to be making fun of them as well as enough seriousness to be accusing them. Tavos noticed people around were starting to take notice of the meeting. Are you implying that we stopped the CSEC investigation just so we could prove Seren's innocence? She asked him. I'm not implying. I'm stating, he bluntly told her. You see, after our last meeting, my team and I decided to go look for Garrus to see what he had found out about Seren. After tracking him to Dr. Michelle's clinic and saving the doctor from a couple of thugs who had come to threaten her, we discovered that she had patched up a Quarian named Talai who had information. Information she wanted to sell to the shadow broker. Only it turned out that the agent she had talked to, Fist, was now working for Seren and set her up to walk into an ambush. After my team had stopped the execution, we escorted Ms. Talai back to the embassy, where she revealed that the information that nearly cost her life had been pulled from a Geth memory core. Yudina tapped a few buttons on the podium next to him. Eden Prime will be a major victory for us. The beacon will bring us one step closer to finding the conduit, Seren's voice announced to all those who heard it. And one step closer to the return of the Reapers, the female voice agreed with him. But what if the council finds out? I have no doubt that if they find out, all I would have to do is say I'm innocent and they'll protect their precious top Spectre without hesitation. They are quite predictable when it comes to things like that. How true that is. You wanted proof, Yudina said with a smug and satisfied smirk. There it is. Tavos, who had worn a gentle and placating, if not subtly condescending, smile, was shaken by what she had heard, making her lose the smile. She, Valerne, and Spiritus had defended Seren because they had honestly thought he was innocent, and he had expected them to do just that. He had used them. Looking at her two fellow counselors, Valerne couldn't hide the expression of surprise and anger from her. Spiritus, however, was much easier to read. The Turian quivered in anger and it honestly looked like he wanted to tear either something or someone to pieces. This evidence is irrefutable, Ambassador, he said, keeping his voice tight and controlled. Seren will be stripped of his Spectre status, and will be hunted down. I recognize the other voice, the one speaking with Seren, Tavos admitted, swinging the attention back to her. It was Matriarch Benezia. If it really was her, they could have been even more wrong about Seren. That is not good, Valerne admitted, realizing what that could mean. For those of us who don't know every single important person out there, who is Benezia? Naruto asked them. He knew what a matriarch was. He just didn't know who this one was. She is a powerful biotic and she has many followers, Tavos explained. She will make a formidable ally for Seren. That might have been putting it mildly, if she had to be honest. She had been a student of Benezia for a time when she was younger and she had felt awed by the woman. A part of her still did. Oh, that's going to be fun, Shukaku said with a snigger. No, not really, the blonde replied. While he had fought Asari enemies before, they were only commandos and he was able to catch them off guard. But he had a funny feeling that if he ever ran into this Benezia, it would not be by accident. I'm more interested in the Reapers, Valerne said. What do you know about them? He asked the humans. Only what we learned from the Geth memory core, Anderson answered. They were a race of machines which hunted the Protheans to the death before vanishing. Also, the Geth seem to think that Seren can bring them back. Not to mention the fact that they worship the Reapers like they were gods, Naruto added. Seren might have attacked Eden Prime to find the conduit. We think that might be the key to bringing the Reapers back, he finished. Do we even know what this conduit is? The Solarian counselor asked them. It sounded important to Seren, which meant it should be important to them. If we did, would we be having this part of the conversation? Naruto asked back, rolling his eyes behind his shades. Seren's going after it, that's incentive enough to know it's bad. Spiritus, who had been silent up to this point, fuming with restrained anger, blew his proverbial top. Do you realize what you're saying? He demanded. Seren is trying to bring back a race of machines that wipe us all out? That's crazy. Where did the Reapers go? Why did they vanish? How come we've found no trace of their existence? If they were real, we would have found something. Has he considered the idea that they haven't looked hard enough? Jayaki asked. I think it's more along the lines of they didn't know what to look for, Saiken disagreed. Or they just ignored those who had found something and called them crazy, Kurama commented. Kami knows that had happened plenty of times before their Jinchuriki had been sealed away. Can you lot have this debate later? Naruto asked them. He was trying to focus on the meeting and them chatting in his head wasn't helping. Tavos glanced at her fellow counselor. Usually he kept a good grip on his emotions. His outburst showed how much Seren's betrayal got to him. I think we can all agree that Seren has betrayed us, she said, placating him and convincing their audience. We can also agree that he's using the Geth to look for the conduit, but we don't know why he's doing it. The humans didn't look too pleased by that, but she wasn't just talking to them. She was talking to everyone who was watching. It's obvious that the Reapers are a myth, Valerne decided. Seren's convenient lie to bind the Geth to his will. Okay, so it's option number 3, Sun declared. Why wasn't he surprised by that? Spiritus saw where they were going and followed suit. Seren is a rogue agent on the run for his life, he announced. He no longer has the rights or resources of a Spectre. The council has stripped him of his position. That is not good enough. Yudina shouted. We both know that if he found out he's lost the right to be a Spectre, he would head straight for the Traverse. Send one of your fleets after him. A fleet cannot track down one man, Valerne told him sharply. It was a rebuff and they both knew it. But he wasn't going to be stopped. A Citadel fleet could secure the entire region, he said, trying a different tactic. Keep the Geth from attacking any more of our colonies. Or it could trigger a war with the Terminus systems. Spiritus countered. We won't be dragged into a galactic confrontation over a few dozen human colonies. They had to think bigger and further than that. When he heard that, the ambassador gave all three a grim smile. Thank you, Counselor Spiritus, you've just given me enough reason to go to the Alliance and ask that we separate ourselves from the authority of the Citadel Council. And before you ask why, it is mostly because I am sick of you three and your anti-human bullshit. He roared, his voice filling the entire room. You cannot find a single person or protect our colonies because you might start a war. You don't let the investigation run its course because we might be right. And when someone who was there, on the ground, gave you solid evidence, you call him a liar. Yudin is right, Naruto said, taking over for the ambassador. I've heard of sticking your head in the sand, but this is fucking ridiculous. Have you ever considered the fact that you probably won't have your war with the Terminus system if you just state your intentions and don't fire first? He asked, more like demanded, of them. You know, after 2,000 years, you would have thought things would be different. Instead, it's the exact same thing, only with more people, and the leaders are even more stupid. Lay it on them, Kaki. Kurama cheered, along with the rest of the Biju. The counselors didn't like being called out like that. Who do you think you're? Spiritus began to demand. The blonde cut him off. Shut up. I'm talking here. He snapped. Didn't your parents teach to be respectful of your betters and elders? I may not be the former, but I am definitely the latter. For the love of Kami, you're the council. You may be the three most powerful people for a good portion of the galaxy, but you've also got a responsibility to those who ask you for guidance and help. And from what I've read and see, you have done an incredibly bad job of doing that. And if you want a good example, how about us? He gestured to the two other humans besides him. You've been telling us that humans should heed your advice and look to you for justice, that your way is better than ours. And when we try to do as you suggested, to try and do it your way, you blow us off. You think of how you can protect one person when you should have brought him to justice for what he did. And, because you chose not to believe us until it was too late, he could be only Kami knows where. Even more spectators watched as the blonde chewed the council out. This was something different, practically new. They didn't want to miss this. So what would you have us do? Valerne asked him, keeping his expression neutral. Even though he or his colleagues had not been expecting the outburst, the human had gotten them dead to rights about what they had done about Saran. The humans had them and they all knew it. I think that would be obvious, Anderson said, just loud enough for them to hear. A fleet can't track down one man, but another man can. He looked pointedly over at Naruto. The counselors saw his look. Their eyes tracked over to the blonde. Two of them started considering the idea. The third was stubborn. No. Spiritus objected vehemently. It's too soon. Humanity is not ready for the responsibilities that come with joining the Spectres, he told Tavos. He was loud enough to be heard by his audience. How can we be ready if you don't let us try? Naruto retorted. The human had a point there. Tavos couldn't deny that. What if we told you that we allowed humanity to try once and their representative failed? She asked him. Out of the corner of his eye, Naruto saw Anderson wince slightly at those words. I wonder if that has to do with his history with Saran. He thought to himself before looking at the Asari counselor. Have you ever heard of the proverb, if at first you don't succeed, try again, he asked back. That proverb was one of the major factors of why he never gave up on being a better shinobi. All three counselors shared a look for one long quiet moment. Finally, they all nodded in agreement, Spiritus a little reluctantly. Your petition to have a human join the Spectres is granted, Ambassador Yudina, Tavos announced. We will allow Commander Naruto Azu. Whoa, hold on, I never said that I was going to join the Spectres, the blonde interrupted her, making the entire area go quiet. No one was expecting him to say that. However, I will gladly join, if you three offer me something. And what would that be? Spiritus asked, already annoyed by the fact that the human wanted something from them. An apology. The council was perplexed by what he said. Why would he be asking for something like that? I don't believe we know what you mean, Commander, Valerne told him. Have we done something to offend you? You haven't offended me, you've insulted me. And I want an apology for that insult, he clarified. How exactly have we insulted you? Tavos asked him, trying to think back through all he had said to them and vice versa. During the hearing with Saran, you told me that I did not know how the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu worked, to my face, he told her, making sure she and the other counselors know just where they went wrong. Considering the fact that's one of the jutsu I use frequently, I'm pretty sure I know how it works. We've already discussed this, Spiritus told him. There is no mention of a memory passing ability tied to the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He scowled at the Turian. 1. Between the two of us, who is the chakra wielder, me or you? He rhetorically asked. 2. You attacked us for breaking a law that we had no knowledge of, and once peace was brokered, you ordered us to tell you about every single jutsu that has been created. Did you really think that we would tell you everything after all that? He could see that they were trying to come up with a good answer, but couldn't. So he pressed on. Let me ask you this question, when Nilus put my name forward and you tried to look me up, did all you get was references to history books? Yes, we did, Tavos answered. She was a little surprised that he figured that out. Did it ever occur to you to look through the history books and read the section on me? Trust me, I've read some of those books. They're very accurate, down to the fact about how I was a master of the jutsu and knew everything about it. In fact, the only person who knew the jutsu better than me was its creator, Tobirama Senjo, the Nidame Hokage. His voice was hitting the ceiling with volume at this point, but he didn't care. He wanted them to know where they had screwed up. So, it's going to be a point of pride for me when you say that I don't know how to use it. The counselors again shared a look between the three of them. That look was full of realization. They had screwed up, rather badly. And in the process, they let Seren go, thinking that he was still loyal to the council. They couldn't deny the fact. So, when Tavos looked at him, she said, "Then I, speaking for the whole council, apologize to you, Commander Naruto Uzumaki, for unintendedly insulting you about your knowledge about your own jutsu." Her voice was sincere and honest. "I accept your apology," he replied. Now they could get on to more serious business. "Now, how are you going to deal with Seren's betrayal?" Publicly, Valerne answered. A half hour later, the council floor was completely packed. Once the announcement had been sent out, people came to the tower, crowding it. They either stood around the glass ceiling covering the garden beneath it or watching from screens. Those who couldn't get into the tower watched what was happening from nearby screens or from their Omni tool. But the fact remained that everyone in Citadel space, as well as quite a few others, were watching with bated breaths. The three counselors stood on one end of the garden while Anderson and Yudina stood on the other end. In the middle of the garden, and in the middle of both groups, stood Naruto. If he had looked up, would have seen that his team was watching from front row seats. As he waited, Spiratus took a small step forward. "It has come to the attention of the Council that the Special Tactics and Reconnaissance Agent Seren Arterius has betrayed us by consorting with the Geth to attack the human colony of Eden Prime of his own free will. We strip him of his rank and charge him with murder, attempted murder, sabotage, and treason. We also charge Matriarch Benazia Tisoni with these same charges, as well as the charge of conspiracy. Is there anyone who is willing to find these traitors and bring them to justice?" No one answered for a long minute. Then Yudina spoke. "As a member of the galactic community, humanity is willing and ready to hunt these traitors down. Is there one among you who would do this task?" Tavos asked him. "I would do it," Naruto spoke. "And who are you?" Valerne asked him. He took a deep breath. "Well, here we go. The moment of truth," he thought to himself. He was about to be revealed to the galaxy. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, and Kushina Uzumaki. I am a member of the Uzumaki clan and also claim blood ties to the Senju clan. I am the Toad Sage of Mt. Mayaboku. I have served under the leadership of the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and the Godaime Hokage, Tsunade Senju. I was the first shinobi to have bested the Godaime Kaze Kage, Sabaku no Gara, when I was only 13. I fought in the Fourth Shinobi World War against Obito Uchiha, and ended it by defeating him and sealing myself away. I have been found again, and I am ready to serve again." He wasn't really one to boast, but Yudina told him that it would prove the fact that it was actually him, which he agreed with. While everyone who in the council floor didn't know what to say, the counselors didn't stop. "Jonin Naruto Uzumaki, we, the council, have decided to grant you all the powers and privileges of the Special Tactics and Reconnaissance branch of the Citadel," Tavos announced, using the rank he preferred to be known by. As she spoke, a Solarian, a Seri, and Turian walked forward towards him. While they didn't wear the same kind of armor, it wasn't that what marked them as specters. All three of them wore long trench coats that were the color of black that could only be found when looking out at space. Only people who were specters could wear these coats, though most only did so in ceremonial practices, which were few for them. "Specters are not trained, but chosen," Valerne told him. "Individuals forged in the fire of service and battle, those whose actions elevate them above the rank and file." The Solarian Spectre opened the box that he had been carrying. Inside was a bundle of cloth the same color of his coat. "Spectres are an ideal, a symbol. The embodiment of courage, determination, and self-reliance," Tavos said. "They are the right hand of the council, instruments of our will." The Aseri Spectre took the bundle from the box and unfolded it, revealing it to be a cloak like hers. "Spectres bear a great burden. They are protectors of galactic peace, both our first and last line of defense. The safety of the galaxy is theirs to uphold," Spiritus intoned. The Turian Spectre took the coat from the Asari and held it out to Naruto. That coat is your uniform, the Solarian Spectre told the blonde. Wear it with pride befitting it. But always remember these words. We work in secret, the Asari Spectre said. We exist in shadow, the Turian Spectre said. Naruto took the coat from the Turian Spectre's hands. For a long moment, he held it in his hands. Then he swung it around his back, slipping his arms into the sleeves as it hit his back. After making sure it was properly on, he looked back at the three specters. And we dress in black, he told them with a grin. They couldn't help but grin back at him. You are the first human spectre, Commander, Tavos told him, getting his attention. This is a great accomplishment for you and your entire species. That was when everyone who was watching began to clap, applauding him for what he had done. He stood there, letting the sounds fill his ears. They applauding him, cheering for him. It felt good. But he wasn't a 12-year-old kid. He wasn't going to let it consume him. He turned to face the counselors. What is my mission? He asked, being all business. He knew what it was, but they were still being formal. We are sending you into the Traverse after Seren, Valerne answered. He is a fugitive from justice, so you are authorized to use any means necessary to apprehend or eliminate him. Any relevant files we have will be sent to Ambassador Udina, Spiritus told him. This meeting of the council is adjourned, Tavos announced. She and her colleagues walked away with the three specters behind them. Now that the ceremony was done, the audience began to disperse too. Within minutes it was like they were never there to begin with. Both Anderson and Udina waited in silence as the new spectre walked back to them. Congratulations, Naruto, Anderson told him, shaking his hand. He smiled. Anderson's congratulations felt more worthwhile than just the applause the audience gave him. We've got a lot of work to do, Uzumaki, Udina told him as they walked out of the garden. You'll need a ship, crew, supplies. Not to mention getting the hell out of here before any other humans start mobbing me, the blonde remarked. Now that the secret was out, he had no doubt that might actually happen. His one hope was that he didn't get fangirls. That's including the Niners, Anderson agreed. He sincerely hoped that Naruto wouldn't run into any of those lunatics while he out in the galaxy. Udina frowned a little. They were supposed to be serious here, why did he feel like the other two were joking? In any case, report back to the Normandy in 1 hour, we should have everything done by then, he said as they came out of the passageway. Anderson, come with me. I'll need your help to set this all up. The two of them walked away just as Naruto's team came up to him. That looked cheerful, Ashley sarcastically remarked. I can just tell the captain's going to enjoy that. In any case, congratulations on becoming a Spectre, Commander, Gurus said to the blonde human. He was just glad to have seen a part of history. Thanks, Gurus, Naruto replied with a smile. While watching something like that was fairly memorable, Tailai was more concerned about what they were going to do now. So, what's next? She asked him. You've all got 1 hour to get your affairs on the Citadel in order. Once you're done, head to Dock 422. Are there any questions? No one answered. Good. Dismissed. He walked away from them, heading for the exit. They all watched him leave. Where do you think he's going? Kaiden wondered aloud. It's none of our business, Rex told him curtly. We've got an hour and I know what I'm doing. And what would that be? Gurus asked him. Finding a damn human history book, he answered before walking away. There was a bookstore he was fairly certain had those at a cheap price. The Turian and the Quarian shared a look. That sounded like a very good idea. Hold up, I'm coming too. The Turian called after the Krogan, going after him. Tailai ran after them. Wait for me. The unit watched the target's team disperse. It hadn't watched the ceremony. It had been too busy taking out threats. They hadn't been living this time but other units, like it. They were rogue units. Thus, they had to be eliminated. It had spent the entirety of the ceremony moving around in the rafters, taking out the rogue units before they could take their shots. Now that was done, it focused back on the target. He would be leaving the citadel soon, to go after Saran. The unit would have to follow in order to follow him. Where the target was going, it didn't know yet. But it was only a matter of listening to the right data channels to learn where and tracking the target to know when. It retreated from the citadel tower, using the same access point it had used to come in. Once Naruto had left the tower, the first stop he made was at Huerta Memorial Hospital, where Nilus had been taken. "Has there been any change?" Naruto asked the nurse as he stood outside the Turian's room. He was almost afraid to go in, but he had to. The nurse, a human woman who looked like she was in her 20s, shook her head. "I'm afraid not. He's the same as he came in," she told him. "I see." He had been hoping for some good news, but knew it was a long shot. "I'll go in then." She nodded. She was notified earlier that people might come in to visit this Turian. The man beside had been one of the people cleared for it. She wondered who he was to the patient. He also seemed familiar to her somehow, like she had seen him before. "If you need anything, just press the orange button. Someone will be there momentarily." "Thank you." He pressed the lock, turning the glow green, opening the door, and walked in. He saw Nilus lying there in the bed made specifically for Turians. He had a blanket drawn up to his chest and his eyes were still closed. Nearby, a machine beeped steadily, showing his heart rate. The blonde sat quietly close to the bed. "Hey, Nilus," he greeted the comatose specter. "I've got good news. They made me a specter. But the bad news is that they've made my first assignment to track down and kill him." He fell silent for a moment. "I'm sorry about that, Nilus. I should have stopped Seren from shooting you. If you were awake, we wouldn't have this problem. Seren would have been found out quicker. The council would have listened to you. Instead they had to deal with me." He chuckled a little when he thought about that. "I may have to admit, I was not gentle with them. Kami, I called them out on a few things." "That would be putting it mildly," Kokuo told him. "You all but chewed them out." "He did chew them out," Kurama said bluntly. It was still fun to watch, though. Shukaku defended his actions. "You have to admit that we enjoyed what he did to them." "We never said we didn't," Isabure replied. Naruto ignored the rambling of the Biju in his head. "I'll admit that the coat is pretty cool," he told Nilus, holding up an end of the coat he now wore to emphasize his point. "Did you feel the same way when you got your coat?" He was met with silence and released the coat end. "You probably did. If I had gotten this thing when I was younger, I probably would have been bouncing off the walls with joy. Then again, I also would have rubbed it in Sasuke's face, if he hadn't gotten one himself already." He smiled nostalgically. "That bastard seemed to beat me whenever we competed against one another. He even became a Chunin before I did. That's only because you said, and I quote, 'We don't have time to try and compete for whether we become Chunin or not. We've got a war going on,'" Kurama reminded him pointedly. "Yeah, I remember that too," Jayaki agreed. "When they got back and had that big celebratory dinner, B had to literally drag you out of the house so you would join them. That had been amusing at the time. In hindsight, it was just sad." Again, he ignored them. There was no point beating a dead horse like that. Besides, there was more to his chances of promotions than that. Whenever he got the chance, it never ended well for his observer. If he had been focused on his chances of promotions, he would have said it was a streak of bad luck. He focused on the Turian in the bed. "But still, the coat is still cool. I just have to wonder if there was any way to make it even cooler." He stopped and had a thought. Dipping his hand into one of the pockets on his pants, he pulled out the white swirl that had been there. He held in his hand, a little amazed that it hadn't been completely destroyed with everything that had been going on. Leaning forward, he pressed the orange button next to the machine before getting up and walking over to the door. Within a few minutes, the door opened and one of the nurses walked through. "Yes?" she asked. "Sorry to bother you," he told her. "And this might be a bit of a weird question, but you do have a sewing kit nearby." Location, unknown. Seren and the matriarch watched in silence as the ceremony finished. As the screen went back to the reporter, Seren turned it off. It took them long enough to figure out, and they needed help from humans to do it, he noted with slight scorn. What is the council coming to? They're going to be sending the new Spectre after us, the matriarch reminded him. She had read up on Naruto Uzumaki and she did not think he would give the hunt easily. I know that, Benazia. I saw what they ordered him to do. He smiled slightly. I must say, I look forward to the challenge. He had read up on the blonde as well. He knew that it would be an interesting fight if they got close to one another. In any event, we have more important things to be worrying about, and we must make sure that they are not hindered in any way. Should I have assassins go after Uzumaki? He shook his head. No, it would just be a waste of resources. If they hadn't been able to take him out on the Citadel, what would be the point? We'll just let him wander the galaxy for. Very well, I'll return to my duties. She turned around and walked towards the door. She stopped and turned her head to look back. Also, I have been informed that they have arrived safely. She told him. He said nothing. She expected him not to. But as she left, he said, I heard some news as well. It seems a group once interested in you is now going after your daughter. From what I've heard, they won't take no for an answer. Anger and fury boiled in her stomach at that statement. She didn't ask what group he was talking about. She could hazard a guess, and that's what made her furious. They were going after her daughter? How dare they? But she wouldn't show that kind of emotion to him. I see, she said instead. Thank you for telling me. For some reason, in this area, what was said between them was kept between them. She didn't know, she just accepted it. There is no need to worry, he assured her. I've sent loyal men to retrieve her. With any luck, they'll have her safe before the tribe makes their move. He didn't see the relief sweep over Benazia's face briefly. All he heard was her leaving. That was fine, just as fine as her daughter being brought to their safety. And once she was here, she would understand their goals, and work for him. Location, Citadel. As the elevator opened, Naruto instantly woke up and walked into the docking bay that held the Normandy. He saw both Yudina and Anderson standing by the entrance to the hatch and quickly made his way over to them. Hey guys, he greeted them. When Yudina turned to look at him, his eyes went to the white swirl that was now sewn to the left shoulder of his specter coat. What is that? He asked. The blonde followed his eyes. A piece of my old life, he answered simply. Anyway, is my team aboard? They are. And I have big news for you. Captain Anderson is stepping down as commanding officer of the Normandy. The ship is yours now. That was probably one of the most surprising and horrifying things Naruto could have ever heard. What? He asked, completely stunned. It's the perfect ship for a Spectre, Anderson told him. She's quick and quiet. He didn't care about that, not yet. Are the two of you nuts? He demanded. This is a horrible idea. What are you talking about? Yudina asked, surprised by his outburst. I would have thought you'd be happy to have your own ship. Yudina, I'm still trying to figure how my Omni tool works without crashing it or setting off a nearby alarm, he replied. I really don't know the first thing about the Normandy. For all we know, I could go looking for the bathroom and inadvertently caused the ship to self-destruct. He waved his arms to emphasize his point. While that might have sounded ridiculous bordering on the humorous, it was clear to them all that the blonde was still adapting to his surroundings. Leaving him in command of a ship might be problematic. I have a solution, Anderson said, getting both their attentions. I'll stay on as an advisor of sorts. I'll help Naruto figure out how the ship works properly, as well as the computer and his Omni tool, while also making sure he doesn't fry himself or the Normandy in the process. Once he's got it under control, I'll leave. That works for me, Naruto agreed with him, glad for the helping hand. It might work for him, but it just meant more paperwork for Yudina, not to mention readjustments with Alliance military. Fine, I'll work it out later, he said with a slight scowl. Now that was taken care of, he turned his attention back to Naruto. In the meantime, there have been reports of Geth sightings at Pharaoh's and Novaria. It's possible that Seren has them looking around there for the conduit. What about the Reapers? He asked. I'm with the council on that one, Commander. I'm not even sure they exist. He frowned at that. The fire daimyo said the same thing about Obito when we told him how dangerous of a threat he was. The next thing we know, the man we had warned him about had set Edogawa ablaze. The irony was not lost on us, he told the ambassador. If the Reapers are real, the conduit must be the key to bringing them back. If we find it before Seren does, or stop him, they don't come back, Anderson said to the both of them, cutting in before they could start fighting. Yudina scowled slightly, but continued. We also have one more lead. Apparently, Matriarch Benazia has a daughter, a scientist who specializes in the Protheans. It's unclear on whether or not she's involved, but it's a good idea to find her and see what she knows. Her name is Lyra. Dr. Lyra T. Sony. Last we heard, she was exploring an archaeological dig on one of the uncharted worlds in the Artemis Tau cluster, possibly Thurum in the Gnosis system. While I guess I know what I'm doing first, Naruto said. Still trying to be the hero and rushing in to save the girl. Kurama asked his Jinchuriki teasingly. Shut up, he replied. The fox laughed with self-amusement. You're a specter, Commander. You don't answer to us, Yudina told him. But make no mistake, you represent humanity as a whole. You make a mess and I'll be the one who has to clean it up. Then I'll try to keep the messes to a minimum, the new specter replied. Good. Now there's just one more thing. When he said that, a person stepped out from behind some crates and walked towards them. This is Agent Qin Misley, formerly of the 666th Numero del Diablo Hunter Unit, Yudina introduced her. She'll be joining your team. Naruto looked her over. She was probably only a few years older than he was, at least biologically. What skin she showed had a dark tan to it, showing that she spent a lot of time under the sun. Her hair was held in a short ponytail that seemed almost businesslike to him. The color of her hair was obviously dyed. The only person he knew who could get close to silver hair was Kakashi-sensei, and his hair was naturally gray. Her amber eyes were hard and completely serious. If he had to judge her by her weapons and armor alone, he'd say she knew her job and handled it like a professional. Is there anything about you that I should know about you that I can't see for myself, Qin Misley? He asked her, almost stumbling over the word. I'm good with demolitions, poisons, and interrogation, she answered simply and shortly. Her accent sounded foreign to him, although it would have told Anderson and Yudina that she hailed from the Great Jungle. Good enough. Welcome aboard. She saluted him and walked to the hatch. If he had to guess, her stuff was already on board. I have a meeting to get to, Yudina told Anderson and Naruto. I trust you'll be able to handle yourself. We'll be fine, Ambassador, Anderson assured him. He gave a small snort of disbelief and walked back to the elevator. I'll go make sure your new teammate gets in comfortably and introduce her to the others, the former captain of the Normandy told the new captain. Thanks, he replied. He watched as Anderson walked towards the hatch and then into it. Then he took a step back to look at the ship in its entirety. When he first walked onto it, he thought it was just going to be a place he was staying for a few days. Now, he was in charge of it and that scared him. As he finally began walking towards the hatch, the only thing he could think of was, I really hope I don't blow this ship up. Are you kidding? Kurama asked. With your luck, that ship and your team will become just as famous as the Konoha 12 was. Chapter 11, We Are Going to Die. Location, Thurum. Lyra felt exhausted, but it was the right kind of exhausted, where she felt good about the work she had done that day. They had made some good headway into the Prothean ruins, getting down to another level. The way things were going, they could be finished with their work in a matter of months instead of years. That would make a lot of people happy. It would certainly make Maya happy, she thought to herself as she walked through the camp. The human certainly didn't like being out here, but she knew that was only because she had been blackmailed into it. She had been there for it and was just as surprised at it as she had been. Lyra never thought Dr. Vomus would do something like that. But it turned okay for them both. They became friends during the trip, and it only got better once they touched ground. They often spent meals together and talking. Maya had even offered her a drink once or twice. She was happy for the company. A lot of the archaeologists didn't think much of her since they believed she was too junior a person to be on such a dig. She sometimes considered the irony of that since she was older than more than a few of them. They weren't wrong. She was here because Dr. Vomus recommended and backed her. She checked her Omni tool. She was a little early, but she could go in and report to Dr. Vomus about the day's progress. As he was the team leader, he didn't get his hands dirty. Actually, the more she thought about it, he hadn't gotten his hands dirty for a while now. Guess that came with being the leader. As she entered his tent, she heard people talking. Funny, Dr. Vomus wasn't supposed to have anyone with him. Was it one of the other archaeologists? She turned the corner and saw he was actually talking through a video conference. The ship is arriving, the Asari on the screen said. Excellent, Dr. Vomus said. And the target has no idea. He scoffed mockingly. None whatsoever. She truly believes that she was hired to be security on this dig. The Alliance certainly fucked up letting her get away. It was almost pathetically easy to get to her. Whether it was easy or not doesn't matter, Vomus. What matters was the end result. The end result? What was that? Lyra kept still, horrified but also interested in what she was hearing. Of course, Dr. Vomus agreed. Within the day, the tribe will have our first viable subject. And there's an added bonus for her being the contract holder of the kangaroos. It'll certainly give us more research to study. She connected the dots. Maya. They were going to kidnap Maya. Oh, goddess. This is an ambush. She thought in a panic. And what of your pet project? I have Benazia's daughter right where I want her, Vomus proclaimed smugly. Once we have the target in hand, I'll take her aside and gently induct her into the tribe. The little girl will believe this is all for the best of the galaxy. It is, the Asari told him pointedly. I know, but it's still a point of pride for me. She has no idea I've been grooming her. Oh, she had an idea now. But as tempting as it was to barge in there and biotically blast the smug ass of a Turian into the wall, she had to get out of there. She had to warn her friend. She all but tore out of there, running across the camp. She found Maya just about to enter the mess tent. She was still wearing what she usually wore when on duty. Maya! Maya! She shouted. The former swagman turned her head, looking with surprised eyes at the Asari. Whoa there, Shalia, she said, catching her before she crashed into something. What's the rush? We have to go. We have to go now. Go where? There really wasn't anywhere they could go on this planet. As far as she knew, listening to the archaeologists, if they weren't careful with their digging, the whole place could end up in the lava. Isn't there a ship coming to pick us up? It's not here to pick us up. It's here to kidnap you. What? Ah, Dr. Tsoni, Dr. Vomus said as he came out of his tent. I wish you hadn't spoiled the surprise. He walked across the camp like nothing was wrong. He glanced up at the sky. Already the ship was settling into the atmosphere. But it looks like we won't have to worry about that now. The other scientists were joining him, all but bearing down on the two like they were prey. Maya shifted her stance and let her hands fall to her sides. What's going on here? She asked him. This, Ms. Maya, is the end of the line for you, he declared with the casual arrogance of someone who believed he already won. You've been isolated and now, there's nothing you can do to escape. I can kill you. She was still packing her rifle. One good shot and he would be down. She noticed the other scientists were producing weapons and holding them like they knew how to shoot properly. You could try, Vomus said. But I doubt it would do any good. You'll still be captured. So why don't you save us the time and effort by putting down that gun? He looked up at the ship coming down towards them. Alright. The ship suddenly exploded. The sound was almost deafening. People covered their ears but watched in horror as their ship fell to the planet's surface as debris. They wondered what just happened, what had just the ship to explode. The answer came when another ship appeared, moving a lot faster towards them. One of the scientists recognized the model of the ship. Geth! He screamed in horror. If that didn't get the point across, the fact that the ship was dropping Geth units in an orbital strike manner did. The scientists started screaming in panic, even more so when the Geth started appearing amongst and opened fire. Maya saw the danger they were in and made a snap decision. "Kman," she said, grabbing Lyra by the hand and running for a nearby jeep. The Asari stumbled a little but kept up the pace enough not to lose her grip. "Where are we going?" she demanded as she climbed into the jeep. "Anywhere not here." She gunned the engine and it roared to life. She took a quick stock of the situation. The camp's front was already overwhelmed by the Geth. The only way they could go was back to the ruins. That's where they were going. "Wait," Dr. Vomus shouted as they started to leave. He ran towards them. "Don't you dare!" That was as far as he got before Maya lined up a shot and took. His body slumped to the ground with a hole in his head. "Good riddance to an asshole," she declared as she floored the gas and tore out of the camp. Location: Naruto. He found himself again in the forest. It was still unnerving, with the ash swirling around him, the shades of people who seemed to fade away every time he got close to them, the starkness of the dead trees surrounding him. Even though he was not running this time, he was still moving slowly. He tried to reach out to touch the shades, but they kept disappearing whenever he got close. "Will I meet someone again?" he wondered quietly. He hadn't run into Orochimaru again, and quite frankly, he didn't want to. But he wasn't sure if he would meet anyone else. He wasn't even sure if he wanted to meet anyone else. He had been told that this place was for the damned and he knew plenty of people who he thought belonged here. Hearing the sounds of footsteps and seeing someone running off out of the corner of his eye, he turned to see who it was. He only caught a glimpse as they disappeared behind a tree. "Hello," he called out, making his way over to the tree. He didn't see anyone when he got to it. Just beyond the next, he saw whoever it was disappear again. "Hey, come on. Who's there?" he asked as he went after them. "Come after me," a voice whispered, echoing all around him. "Maybe if you would hold still, I'd be able to catch you," he muttered as he continued to go after the person. "Don't come after me," the voice whispered again, becoming a little clearer. "Now how can I stop after you've already told me to come after you?" he asked rhetorically as he pressed on. "Don't come after me," the voice said a third time, more forcefully. "Sorry, but that's not happening," he said as he got closer and closer to the person, getting into grabbing distance. "You got me curious and now." He reached out and grabbed hold of the person's shoulder. "I've gotcha," he declared in triumph. But the victorious grin he had on his face evaporated when he turned the shoulder around and saw who it was. Haku. "I told you not to come after me," the boy he once knew told him quietly. He looked exactly the same as the last time he saw him. Every detail was exactly the same. "You should have listened to me." How?" he struggled to ask. But he just couldn't say the words. He never thought that Haru would be here in this forest. "It doesn't matter in the end," he replied, sounding sad to even speak of it. "I am here. And so should you." Naruto looked down and saw that once again, he was on fire. Suddenly the smell of cooking flesh filled his nose. He woke up, but didn't move. He had no reason to try and twist his way out of the hammock, end on the floor, and look like an idiot. Even though he was the Normandy's captain now, he still slept in the hammock. After Anderson came back on the ship, the two of them had a bit of an argument about who would actually sleep in the captain's room. Naruto effectively ended it by asking Anderson if he had ever slept in a hammock before. He just lay there, with his necklace and dog tags pressed against his chest. Of all the people I had to dream about, why did it have to be him? He silently asked himself. "Hey, are you just going to lie there or are you going to get up?" Rex said from where he leaned against the wall. He held a book in his hands, slowly flipping through the pages. Gurus was doing the same thing over by the vehicle, which Naruto learned was called a Mako, parked by the back. Ashley was busying herself by taking care of the guns the ship's weapon locker had. I'm up." The blonde rolled out of the hammock and stretched, getting the kinks out of his body. A nearby crew member stopped and looked at him as he stretched. She blushed heavily when his shaded eyes looked over at her and she kept on walking, avoiding eye contact. "That was weird," Naruto muttered to himself as he walked over to his locker. He had been shown the thing after a few crew members pointed out that it wasn't a good idea to leave your clothes underneath the hammock. Gurus rolled his eyes as he turned a page. You do know you just gave her an eyeful, right? He asked the new Spectre as he put his clothes on. Pardon me for feeling like I still live alone in an apartment, he replied as he zipped up his flak jacket. Despite numerous offers from his friends to live at their house, and even several interventions in the forms of attempted kidnappings, he had stayed at his own apartment. Of course, during the war it became less like an apartment and more like a workplace. Sir, shouldn't you be getting up the captain's room for your lesson? Ashley asked without even looking up from the guns in front of her. Even though Naruto was officially in command of the ship, it didn't feel like that with Anderson on board. I'm going, Ash. Could you give me a minute? He asked rhetorically as he grabbed the Spectre coat. Riding the elevator up to the second floor of the ship, he got off, waved a greeting to Q and Misley, who sat at the mess table, and made his way back to the captain's room. Coming in, Anderson, he announced as he walked through the door. Welcome, Commander, Anderson replied as he stood by the computer. Shall I start it? Even though he sounded polite, there was no mistaking the amused look on his face. No, I think I figured out where the start button is, especially after you told me that I had hit the intercom button last time, he retorted with a small scowl. It's nice to know that I'm able to make the crew laugh. All he did was remark that the council members were the same as politicians he knew, one had to swim through the shit they spew. The former captain couldn't help but smile a little wider at that. To be fair, we had all thought along the same lines at least once. He just said it out loud. The blonde sat down in the chair and touched the start button, turning the computer on. His mind was still on the council and politicians in general. Whenever Tsunade had sent him on missions that dealt with politicians, he and everyone else who was the team usually had to restrain themselves from banging their heads against the wall or beating the politicians bloody. Those idiots believed that the war was no concern of theirs and that things would continue on as normal. One of the most outstanding examples of that was the Fire Daimyo. He was absolutely convinced that what they told him of Obito were exaggerations. Within the week, the threat they warned him about had arrived at Edogawa. By the end of the day, it was burning to the ground. Naruto, you have to remember that the crew and most of humanity don't think very highly of the council or what they say, Anderson told him as the computer came on. Did you read about the Anvil trade crisis when your clones were at the library? Yeah, I think I did. It was a trading argument that almost led to another fight, right? He asked, looking up from the chair. That would be right. A monk of the mountain was called in to settle the dispute and head the negotiations between the Alliance and the Council. If we hadn't called him in, it would have gone to war. That would imply that both sides have an equal chance of winning, the blonde remarked before looking at the screen in front of him. He was confident that the Alliance would have the advantage. So, what am I doing today with this commie-forsaken thing? Anderson leaned down beside him to look at the screen. I thought we try and cover emails. Whatever happened to actual mail? The new Spectre wondered aloud. You modern people have gotten so lazy. There was a jesting tone to his accusation. It sure beats waiting for birds to bring us what's needed, he replied with a straight face. Imagine getting the important report that you need 5 seconds after it was written up and sent to you. As far as he knew, that was far better than waiting days or weeks for it. Good point, Naruto conceded. So, what am I doing? Scroll down to the symbol that looks like an envelope, the former captain instructed him, waiting him to move the mouse to move the pointer on the screen. They had an interesting /odd agreement the previous day about why it was called a mouse. Now double-click it and you'll be in your inbox. He did so and a new screen popped up. Is that a lot or not? He asked. As far as he could tell, the messages he had filled the length of the screen. That is a lot, Anderson agreed. That's probably because the spam filter hasn't been turned on yet. He'd get to that once the lesson was done. Well, that would explain this aid for the Asari Playhouse, he commented, having opened one of the emails and was being blasted with lights and sounds that showed an Asari in a position he was pretty sure one could only get if they were either limber enough or had broken one of their limbs. This is why I'm glad Ero Sennin is dead. I don't think the Asari people would have been able to handle him. Aren't you giving him a little too much credit? I know he was your sensei and all, but still. He looked away from the screen and made eye contact with Anderson. Jiraiya didn't get his title just from peeping. From what he told me, about half or more of the Ika Ika books are based on personal experience, he said with complete seriousness. Oh. It was all he could say. He had read the Ika Ika books once in his life and could honestly believe what the blonde was saying about the famous, and infamous, man. He also knew what Naruto said about him, and the Asari was probably true. The popular saying was if you gave an Asari an Ika Ika book, the only time you would see her would be when she went to get the next one. Anyway, click on the inbox button to return to the rest of the messages. Okay. He did so, looking back at the screen and carefully moving the mouse. When he had first started trying to work the computer, he had nearly embedded the mouse in the nearby wall. The only reason that didn't happen was because Anderson was quick enough to catch it. Now, he was able to move it without sending it flying. Still felt weird though. Sheesh, is there any way to just tap on the screen and get what I want? He asked. That'll come later, Anderson assured him. Now to get rid of some of these messages, just click on the empty white boxes besides them to select them. Isn't that a little inconsiderate? He asked. These people wrote to me, it's only fair that I write back. Some of these messages are automatic ones. They're kinda like ads. Nobody really pays attention to them. Oh, okay. So how do I do this? Just click on the boxes next to these ones. He pointed at the ads in question. Naruto did so, being careful to click on only those boxes. Now, scroll up and click on the delete button. He waited as the blonde did just that. Congratulations, you've just deleted your first ads. Yay, he cheered in monotone. What's next? Before Anderson could tell him, the intercom came on. Commander, we're approaching Thurum. 8 is about 20 minutes. Thanks, Joker, Naruto called out. So, how is this going to happen? He asked Anderson as he stood up from the chair. Even though he was in command of the ship, he still thought of Anderson as the person in charge. He didn't correct the blonde. He knew it would take time for him to get used to it. Joker won't land directly at the dig site, that'll warn anyone who came here as well that we're here, he explained. Instead, he's going to drop your team off in the Mako a few clicks away. From there, you'll drive to the dig site. That was the only thing he would tell the new Spectre. After they had taken off from the Citadel, he spoke to Naruto in private and told him that he would not help during missions. He was just the technical advisor. Got it, he said. I'll go tell them to get ready. He walked out of the room, the door closing automatically behind him. They all stood ready in front of the Mako, armored up and weapons checked. There was just one question left. How exactly do you get into this thing? Naruto asked as he stared at the Mako. The vehicle had been moved from its corner and was placed on the runway. He couldn't see any obvious openings, but he didn't really know the vehicle. To answer his question, Kaiden walked over to the Mako and pressed his hand against the side. The area underneath his hand glowed blue for a brief moment before turning green and then fading away. Next to his hand, the bottom side of the Mako opened up, leaving a hole that seemed to open to a black abyss. Oh, that's how, the blonde said simply. Yeah, that's how. Kaiden replied. The rest of the team were doing their best not to snigger or laugh. They knew the blonde was not used to machines like this. Still, it was still a little funny. Okay, moving on. He looked at the rest of his team, ignoring the snickers coming from his mind. So, is there any spot in the Mako I should sit in to stay out of the way? He asked them. He knew better than to drive or to use the turret. The back seat, they answered in unison. All right then, who's driving? That would be me, Qin Mizely told him. Good to know. He walked over to the hole, crouching down slightly to get his head inside, stood back up and hoisted himself up into the Mako. The inside of the vehicle was spacious enough for people to move around, but not so spacious to allow them to relax. 2 seats were up front with 2 rows seated opposite of each other against the sides and 1 seat right up against the back of the Mako. Without pausing, he walked over to the back seat and sat down. Right after him, the others began to fill the Mako up. Rex came next, hoisting himself up with practiced ease. Qin Mizli and Kaiden followed, taking the driver's seat and shotgun respectively. Gurus and Talai came afterward, sitting across from Rex. Ashley came in last, closing the hole with a tap of her hand against the wall. She sat down next to the Turian and the Quarian, somewhat apprehensive if her facial expression was anything to go by. "We're all ready, Joker," she announced as Qin Mizli started the Mako. "Roger that," opening the cargo bay door now, the pilot responded from the vehicle's intercom. The sound of the cargo bay door opening filled the Mako. "Wait, what?" Naruto thought as he quickly double-checked what he heard. Joker, we're still flying." "Why would you open the door if we're still flying?" he asked through the comm in his ear. "Oh, that's right. This would be your first time. Are you sitting in the back seat, sir?" "Yeah," he answered, unsure if he should be concerned about the restrained humor in Joker's voice. "Okay then. The door is opened. Whoever's driving, gun it." Qin Mizli didn't need any more encouragement. She stomped down hard on the gas and the Mako roared in appreciation. It ran down the runway and out the cargo bay door. "You bastards!" screamed Naruto as he felt his stomach drop due to the gravity. He was fairly certain that if he wasn't holding on for dear life, he would be plastered up on the ceiling. The fact that the others didn't look all that sacred, Rex even looked like he was enjoying it, didn't help at all. He was also pretty sure that the Biju in his head were saying "we." Kaiden counted down as the ground got closer and closer through the front window. When he stopped, Qin Mizli slammed her fist down on a button between them. The vehicle jerked and shuddered as the micro-thrusters kicked in, slowing the Mako down and letting it land on the planet's surface without any incidents. Qin Mizli looked back at everyone. "How are we?" she asked. Most of them gave an affirmative noise to indicate that they were fine. However, Naruto didn't, mostly due to the fact that he somehow lost the hold he had on his seat and was face down on the floor. "You good, sir?" she asked him. He raised his head and looked at her. "Tell me something. Do you do this to all the new people, or have I done something to offend you?" he asked, letting nothing show on his face. Shikaku's wanted to do it again, quite vocally. He ignored the Biju. "It's tradition, Commander," Kaiden assured him. "The new guy or the rookie gets the crash seat." He remembered his first time with the crash seat. While he hadn't landed so spectacularly as the new Spectre, he was absolutely convinced for a week that his biotics were malfunctioning because of that. "Good. If it had been a prank, I would have been honor-bound to prank you all back," he said with complete seriousness as he got back up and returned to the back seat, aka the crash seat. Nobody chose to say anything in response, mostly because of his successful track record with pranks when he was younger, and also the fact that they didn't want to be pranked by him later. As he sat back down in the seat, he got focused. Time to play the game. Qin Mizli turned her attention back to the front and put her foot down hard on the pedal. The Mako surged forward, slamming Naruto back against his seat. "What in the name of Kami?" he mentally swore. Some of the others weren't better off either. "You might want to consider slowing down, Qin Mizli." Kaiden shouted at her as she drove at speeds that would have gotten the attention of any law officer. "Watch out for the ditch. Watch out for the ditch." "I see the ditch," she replied, hitting the thrusters just as she was about to said ditch. The Mako lifted up off the ground and glided over the ditch, landing with a small thump. She continued on driving like nothing was wrong. Most of the team were holding on for dear life. But not all of them. "Ah, this is relaxing," Rex mused as he closed his eyes. After a few minutes, it looked like he had nodded off. The others who could see him stared in disbelief. How can he fall asleep in this? They thought to themselves as the Mako hit another bump. "Commander, I'm picking up some weird readings," Joker said, his voice coming out from the intercom. "Really strange, like off the dem charts strange." "Got any idea where it's coming from, Joker?" Naruto asked in return, touching the comm in his ear. "Oddly enough, they're coming from the same spot our target was last seen at, an underground complex a few clicks away from the drop zone." "Kami, I hope she hasn't done anything stupid," he muttered to himself as both Ashley and Kaiden told the driver to watch out for the lava. "Alright Joker, we'll keep an eye out for these readings while we look for the target." The entire vehicle swerved around a turn, almost making him slam into the wall. "That is if we get there in one piece," he added, taking his fingers off the COMM. "Incoming ship!" shouted Qin Misley, getting everyone's attention. Outside the Mako, a ship flew overhead and past them. After stopping ahead of them on the path, it hovered as small specks jumped from its underbelly. "Shit! It's the Geth!" Ashley swore as she stood in the middle of the Mako, in front of what Naruto assumed was the console that had to deal with the turret on the top of the Mako. "Then start shooting," the hunter told her as she kept on driving. She swerved sharply to avoid an incoming rocket, which smashed into the spot they were just in. Ashley didn't need any more prompting. As the Mako charged the Geth, she opened fire. One of the Geth was taken out by her while the other was simply bulldozed over by Qin Misley. The entire vehicle shuddered as they felt the Geth unit be torn apart by the wheels. And yet, Rex was still asleep. "How is that guy not awake?" Matatabi demanded. "This driving would wake up Yujito, and she was the heaviest sleeper I've ever known. Her pervious Jinchuriki slept through 3 thunderstorms high in the mountains and not once she did wake up." "I know," Jayaki agreed. "I remember when the Raikage drop kicked B into her apartment once when she was napping. All she did was roll over. How exactly is that relevant to the fact that we might die at any moment?" Naruto asked the two Biju as he listened to Kaiden telling Qin Misley to watch out for the lava as she drove on a land bridge. He honestly thought that the Biju in his head could just wander from one topic to another in a conversation. He was still trying to figure out how they got to discussing flavors of puddings from wondering about where Seren was hiding. "And I thought Septatum's driving was bad," Gurus muttered to himself as he jostled around in his seat. "Who's Septatum?" Talai asked him, curious. She felt somewhat awkward, being the only civilian in the group, so she wanted to know her teammates better. "Guy I knew while I was in the military," he told her. Guy had a thing for trying to break the speed limit in less than 60 seconds, usually in a military vehicle. "You would not believe how many times my unit had to wrestle him away from the driver's seat of a vehicle when we got one. Every time they got a vehicle, they all had the same look of panic while Septatum grinned like a maniac." "How good does he look compared to Qin Misley?" Ashley asked, still on the gun console. Her eyes were looking through the scope, keeping an eye out for enemy targets. "She makes him look like he could drive something blindfolded, upside down, from the back seat." They all shared a laugh at the image of that. "You know, I can hear you," Qin Misley said from the front. She didn't sound angry or annoyed by what they said, but that might have been because she was focusing on driving. "Pay attention, we've got a camp right in front of us." It was probably the same camp the archaeologists were using. Naruto got out of his seat and made his way to the front of the Mako. He saw the camp, but he also saw the walls surrounding the camp and the defenses erected. "Hold on, Qin Misley," he told her as he looked out the front. She stopped the Mako, letting the commander get a good look at the gate blocking them. "Joker, are there any humans on the other side of that gate?" he asked, touching the comm in his ear again. "Not that I'm reading, no," the pilot answered. "That's all I need to know," Qin Misley said, ready to put her foot down on the gas. "Wait, hold on," Kaiden stopped her as he checked the surroundings. "There's a small canyon off to the side. I think it loops around the outpost. Give me a minute." Joker told them as he checked. "He's right, sir. It goes around and right into the camp." "Thanks, Joker," Naruto told him before turning his attention to the driver of the Mako, taking his fingers off the COMM. "You heard him, Qin Misley," he said. "Head for the canyon." "Yes sir," she replied, putting her foot down on the gas pedal. The Mako turned sharply and made for the canyon. She heard her commander yelp as he hit the ground, but she didn't look back at him. "You couldn't have waited until I got back to my seat before moving?" he demanded as he got back up, rubbing his forehead. He was pretty sure that she did that on purpose. "Sorry sir," she said, keeping her eyes forward. She sounded like she didn't mean it. He probably would have pushed it, if they weren't moving and he wasn't risking a head injury. He just went back to his seat and sat down. I see a turret up ahead, Ashley informed them before opening fire on the turret. Qin Maisley didn't stop. She pressed on and played chicken with the rockets being fired at the Mako. The bullets that sprayed from the Mako's gun hammered the turret's shield and it seemed to do nothing. Try using the cannon instead of the gun, Gunny, Kaiden suggested as the Mako swerved to avoid another rocket. She was aware of that. She wanted to try that first. Just give me a minute, she grounded out as she adjusted for the cannon. It wasn't exactly easy, mostly because of the fact that she was liable to be tossed around by Qin Maisley's driving. Thankfully, the adjustments only happened when the cannon was first used in a mission. After that, switching between the gun and the cannon would be easier. Once she was done, she fired once and the turret exploded. Did you just shoot the turret through its barrel? The human biotic asked with surprise. His question made the others, with the exception of Rex, who was still asleep, look at her. What do you think? She asked, keeping her eyes firmly in the scope. Just focus on what's in front of us. Qin Maisley did as she was heated and continued driving, going past the ruined turret and into the camp, and almost into one of the canyon walls at one point, scaring the passengers. The minute the Geth saw that the Mako had made it into the camp, they opened fire. Both the driver and the gunner of the Mako responded in kind, Ashley by returning fire, and Qin Maisley by running them over. With the way she was driving, it was all Kaiden could do was stay in his seat. Watch out! Rocket incoming at 2 o'clock. He warned her as he kept an eye out for enemy targets. The hunter only grunted in acknowledgement and banked hard, avoiding the rocket. Ashley swerved the Mako's turret towards the Geth unit that had fired the rocket, reducing it to pieces within a matter of moments. The Mako felt stable enough, ironically, for Garrus to get out of his chair and look out the front window. We should get out of here soon, he remarked. The Geth were taking a beating but they weren't stopping. If we don't, we'll be trapped here and the Geth will either overwhelm us or blow us to bits. But the only way out is through the other gate and the controls for that can only be accessed from one of the 2 gatehouses, Kaiden pointed out. If we try and go out there, we'll waste time and possibly get pinned down by the Geth outside while more arrive. We don't need to get to the gatehouses, Qin Maisley remarked as she suddenly threw the Mako into reverse. Ashley, fire the gun at the gate in front of us. Keep it centered on the middle, she ordered. What about the Geth? Ashley asked uncertainly. It would have been more prudent to keep focusing on the enemies around them than on something that wasn't going anywhere. Just do it. She snapped. The gunny chief did as she was ordered and began firing at the gate. She kept the bullets focused on one spot of the gate. While that part of the gate began to look dented and battered, it still held. When Qin Maisley finally stopped the Mako, they were backed up against the gate that would have initially blocked them and were facing the other gate. You're not thinking of? Kaiden asked the driver in growing horror when he realized what she was about to do. I sure am, she replied, taking the Mako out of reverse and barreling towards the opposing gate. Use the cannon, Gunny. Ashley immediately switched to the cannon and fired a shell into the direct center of the gate, where she had been shooting it beforehand. The shell hit the gate hard and caused it to burst apart, leaving a hole. The hole got even wider when the Mako broke through it. Are they still behind us? Talai asked as they left the camp. The Geth had been firing on them as the Mako drove to and through the gate. It was unlikely that they would just stay put after that. Yeah, they are, Ashley answered, swiveling the console, and the turret, around to the back and began firing at the Geth behind them. Does this thing have a back window by any chance? Naruto shouted to the front over the dull rattle of the gun firing. Sorry, they didn't think of that when they were designing the Mako, Qin Maisley said in deadpan as she kept driving forward. Gunny, we've got more enemies up front. Just run over them, I'm a little busy with what's behind us, she snapped as she continued firing at the Geth. The hunter stifled an irritated growl and pressed onward, running over the Geth that were in front of them. By the time she made the turn around the lake of lava, keeping a good distance from it, much to the others' gratitude, the Geth behind them had fallen back, giving Ashley a chance to let the gun cool off. After that little excitement, the ride got a little repetitive. They drove through 2 tunnels while also dealing with Geth units that had been waiting and tried to stop them. Needless to say, combined with Q and Meisley's driving and Ashley's shooting, they didn't last any longer than 5 minutes. But while the ride in the tunnels was somewhat smoother, emphasis on somewhat, everyone was still bouncing around like they were preparing to become a part of a pinball game. When the Mako suddenly stopped, everyone was surprised. "We there already?" asked Rex, waking up. Some of the team stared at him funnily. He ignored them. "No. We've got rocks in the way and we can't risk shooting them lest we announce our presence to anyone ahead of us," Q and Meisley told him. "We gotta walk from this point on." Practically everyone in there, minus the Krogan, gave quiet thanks to the deity they worshipped when they heard that. They all stood up and waited for their turn to get out of the Mako. Rex went out first, mostly because if they were fired on coming, he'd be able to take it long enough for everyone else to get out, and everyone quickly followed. "Is everyone out?" Naruto asked. "Yes," they all chorused. "Okay. Ash and Garrus, stick to the back and cover us with sniper rifles," he ordered. He had read Garrus' profile after he had come aboard the Normandy. He had made sure to do that with all of his teammates before they got to the planet. "Kaiden, you and Talai stay in the middle and keep your eyes open. Rex and Q and Meisley, you're up front with me. Are there any questions?" No one replied. "Good, let's move. Oh, and by the way, Q and Meisley, next time I'm driving," he told her as he moved through the hole that had been naturally made by the rocks. "You don't know how to drive," Rex remarked as he and the hunter followed him. "That's why he had been in the crash seat." "Then I'll learn. At the very least, I am never going through that kind of experience again." Thank Kami he didn't eat before they left the ship. If the landing hadn't been enough to make him shit his pants, the ride certainly would have. "We all alive, aren't we?" Q and Meisley asked as the others came through the hole. "I'd rather deal with Septatum's driving than yours," Garrus remarked from the back of the group. "Do you not realize how many times you almost drove into the lava?" He could feel the heat of that stuff from inside the Mako. "Well, I didn't, okay." The argument would have continued had they not spotted Geth coming straight at them. They all quickly ducked behind the nearest cover, which were large boulders. Both Garrus and Ashley rose slightly from cover to get a good aim. Both fired once, at the same Geth. One bullet took care of its shields and the other took care of it. Kaiden dealt with the second one with a well-placed use of his biotics, smashing it against the wall. The third's shields were disabled by Talai and Rex finished it off with his shotgun. "Hey, leave some for the rest of us," Naruto joked slightly as they moved forward. The humor disappeared when they came under fire again. This time, the Geth that were attacking them had support from snipers in the towers nearby. "Shit." Q and Meisley swore as she ducked beneath a boulder to avoid a shot from one of the snipers. "Can anyone hit those damn snipers?" she demanded. Naruto quickly judged the distance and shook his head. "They're too far away for me. I'd have to get in closer," he told her. He focused on the Geth on the ground coming towards them, throwing kunai and shuriken at them. Garrus took aim and fired once. "That's one down," he announced as the first Geth sniper fell from the tower. The other sniper took notice of what had happened, but was shot before it could do anything in response. "And that's two," the Turian said in delight. He was proud of his skill with the sniper rifle. He wasn't one to boast about it, the military had beaten that out of him, but he was still quite proud of the fact. "Great, now how about helping the rest of us out here?" Kaiden asked as he and the rest of the team focused on the ground team of Geth. Due to their combined fire, they quickly dealt with the remaining Geth. Once that was done, they hurried across the small clearing and up the slope that went around behind the towers. There was a single Geth waiting for them on the slope's pass, but one blast from Rex's shotgun sent it flying over the edge into the lava below. When they came to the top of the slope, they saw buildings ahead of them. "Joker, are we at the location?" Naruto asked through the COMM. The place seemed to be half buried in the rock and definitely didn't look like any building he had seen before. Then again, he hadn't seen a lot of architecture styles. He woke up. "That would be an affirmative, Commander," Joker replied. He tried to say something, but it became garbled and distorted, eventually going silent. Joker? You still there? The new Spectre asked. When he didn't get a response, he looked at the others. Is anyone else getting through to him? Taylai shook her head. I think we might be getting jammed, she told him. She double-checked on her Omni tool. There weren't any signals coming from that either. We're going to have to worry about it later, Rex said as he readied his shotgun. We've got company. They all swung their attention to where he was facing. Clinging to the underside of a bridge connecting two buildings on higher levels was a Geth unit. It had no obvious weapons, but that didn't mean it wasn't armed. The way it moved reminded Naruto of a squid, somewhat. It's a hopper. The Quarian on the team exclaimed, aiming her skirmisher pistol at it and opening fire. The hopper in question leapt down from the bridge and scurried out of sight. Above their heads, a ship flew over their heads and dropped more Geth in front of them, including one that looked like a far bigger version of the four-legged Geth that Kuenmeistli had ran over in the Mako. Almost immediately, they were being targeted by sniper fire, forcing them behind large crates. Geras, Ash, take care of those snipers. Naruto ordered them as he readied a few shuriken. He leaned out over the edge of the crate and threw the shuriken at the giant Geth. It was meant to probe its defenses, but the shuriken were shot to pieces by the Geth surrounding it. What was that all about? He wondered. Perhaps it's because it doesn't want to waste energy destroying small things when it has more important targets to worry about. Sun suggested. That is if it can worry at all, Matatabi pointed out. Isabu nodded. You know, that's a good point. No it's not, Komei protested. Naruto scowled. Don't you dare start debating about this idea. I'm in the middle of a firefight and I don't want to hear it. He mentally shouted at them. He really didn't need that going on in his head at the moment. There was a general huff from them, but they listened. Why aren't those snipers taken care of, guys? He demanded, pulling his head back to avoid sniper fire. The dim hoppers keep distracting us. Ash replied, sitting in a crouch the next crate over. And every time we try to take care of them, the snipers try to take us out. If this keeps up, that Colossus will tear us to shreds, Rex told them. Right after he spoke, they felt the ground shudder and were showered with small rocks. A few of them took a quick look past the crates and saw a giant hole a few feet in front of them. It looked like the Colossus was seeing how far away they were and was measuring out the distance by shooting at them. The rest of the Geth kept firing at the crates, either hoping to reduce them to broken iron and splinters or pierce the people behind them. One of those hoppers is coming towards us, Kuenmeistli noted as she peeked past the crate. Pulling her head back and reaching into the pouches that hung around her waist, she quickly rigged an explosive device and hurled it past the crate. It sailed through the air and struck the hopper that was scuttling towards them, destroying it with a small explosion. What was that? Taylai demanded. Quick rig bomb, she explained as she picked up her pistol again. The hunters taught me how to do that. Well, that's one hopper down, Naruto remarked. He scanned the battleground and cobbled together a plan. Okay, here's what's going to happen, Kaiden and Rex, you two deal with the Geth that's with the Colossus. Taylai and Kuenmeistli, you distract the snipers. Geras, you deal with the distracted snipers. Ashley, you take care of the remaining hopper, he ordered. As he talked he put the rest of the shuriken back into their holsters. What are you going to do? Rex asked as he readied his shotgun. I'm going to take care of the Colossus. He quickly made two clones with a hand seal. He held out his hand and the other two held their hands around it. Kurama, I can't go into sage mode, there isn't enough time. Help me out, he told the fox as he began concentrating. I know, the fox replied, sending his Jinchuriki some of his chakra. The others did as they were ordered. Taylai and Kuenmeistli moved out of cover firing at the snipers while Rex and Kaiden did the same, except for firing at the Geth near the Colossus. Both groups returned fire while the hopper was still moving around, trying to take potshots at them. It was quickly taken care when Ashley shot it down in midair. You're all good, Geras. She told the Turian. He immediately raised his rifle and fired at the distracted snipers. They fell over the railing and crashed into the dirt below. Before anyone could say anything or do anything, they heard the very air itself being cut apart. Turning to see what was causing the noise, they all saw Naruto standing behind them with one of his most famous jutsu spinning a few inches above his outstretched hand. "Get out of the way," he ordered them. Futon, Raisin Shuriken, Wind Style, Spiraling Shuriken. He hurled the jutsu straight at the Colossus. It sailed through the air, cutting it as it flew, and struck the Colossus's side. It and the nearby Geth were soon engulfed in a sphere of wind. As soon as it had appeared, the sphere disappeared, leaving only ruined remains of Geth. "Kila," Taylai said in stunned wonder. She had never seen something like that before in her entire life. Sure, she had read about the famous jutsu in the history book she had bought, but reading and seeing were two very different things. Naruto watched as the wreckage floated to the ground. He wilted and almost fell to the ground. He stopped by supporting himself with his hands on his knees. The team were surprised, the humans moving to help him, but he waved them off. "Guess, I'm still not back at full strength," Naruto noted as he panted slightly. He looked a bit winded, as if the jutsu had taken a bit out of him. "Neither is the jutsu." "Wait, how could that thing not be at full strength?" Gurus demanded. He was fairly certain that what he had just seen could be classified as a WMD, and the specter among them was saying that it wasn't at full strength. The sphere should have been bigger and longer. There should also have been a shockwave and a crater, he explained as he got his breath back. "Plus, I haven't used two clones since I originally created it." The aliens in the group, as well as the hunter, only stared at him in shock and surprise. "In any case, let's get to the target. If the Geth are already ahead of us, odds are they already have her." They all agreed and went up the ramp that led into the underground complex. Liara was trying not to panic, but it was getting a little hard when she was being held by a security device made by the Protheans and was surrounded by Geth as well as a Krogan. "This isn't good. This isn't good at all," she said to herself. She hadn't expected this to happen when they ran into the ruins. "Take it easy, Sheila," Maya told her as she hung behind her in the same device, their backs against each other. "It won't help if you start panicking. Trust me, I know." She sounded relaxed, even carefree despite the situation they were in. Yet her eyes watched everything, waiting for something to appear. Liara couldn't see that. She was amazed by how calm her friend seemed to be. "How can you not be panicking?" she asked, trying to look at her from the corner of her eye. All she could see was the dirty blonde hair of her bob cut. "It's just part of my training," she answered. "If you panic, you're liable to end up dead." "Oh." It was she could say at the moment. It hard sometimes to remember that the human that the archaeology team had hired was more than a simple park ranger. Maya, I'm sorry for making you let the others die." She didn't tell her to stop and pick up any of the other scientists. They just got in the jeep and gunned it for the ruins. "Don't apologize for things that aren't your fault, Sheila," Maya replied. "Those scientists were going to kidnap me for something, blackmailing me to come out here just they could do that. You were the only one who tried to warn me when you knew." She felt no shame in leaving them all to die. "Besides, I was hired to protect any and all of you. I did just that." But still. She went silent as she heard a strange noise come from above them. "What's that?" she asked. She really couldn't see anything from her position. Neither could Maya. So she listened to the sound instead. It quickly became familiar as it got closer. "That's gunfire," she declared after a few moments. "Does that mean someone else is here?" Her voice rang with hope. "Could be," she conceded. "And if the oncoming sound of the elevator is any indication, they're coming down to us." "Hello?" Liara called out, hoping someone would answer. All she got in response was the elevator stopping right above them. "Can anyone hear me? We're trapped and we need help." "We hear ya," a male voice responded right above them. "Just give us a minute and we'll come down to you." The next minute was filled with the sounds of people moving down the ramp that was right above them and then jumping down in front of them. By the time they were done, there were 7 people standing there. 4 were humans, 1 was Aquarian, another was a Turian, and the last one was a Krogan. "Are you Dr. Liara T. Sony?" The blonde human asked. Yes, I am. She answered. Who are you? He was probably the leader, but she needed to know more. Jonin Naruto Uzumaki, Spectre Agent. Are you alone in there? Maya hitched her breath at that name. If this guy was joking, it wasn't a funny joke. But nothing they could do about it now. They could only hope he would be able to get them out. Nope, I'm here too, she announced from behind Lyra. The name is Maya Clayton, and before you ask what I'm doing here, I was hired on by the archaeology team. Both me and Sheila here are the only two remaining. They didn't need to know any more than that. The human specter had a look of confusion. I thought her name was Lyra. It is, the Asari assured him. Then why did she just call you Sheila? I think Maya is from the down under, sir, the other male human explained to him. Born and bred, mate. Maya said proudly. Please listen, Lyra begged the people outside. We're stuck in a Prothean security device. We can't move, so you'll have to come to us to get us out. She was fairly certain that her legs were beginning to cramp up, and she wasn't even sure how that was possible, considering the fact she wasn't even using them at the moment, and she desperately wanted to get out. Your mother is working with Saran, doctor. How do we know you're not doing the same? The female human with the dark hair asked with a small accusatory glare. She scowled, instantly going from wanting help to being mad at the accusation. I haven't spoken to Benazia in years. She retorted. I may be her daughter, but I'm nothing like her. Relax, Sheila, Maya told her, her voice firm. Look, whoever is talking, could you get us out of here first, then worry about what side we're on? And how do we get you out of there? The Krogan asked her. He sounded equal parts bored and amused at the situation. There's a control in here that should turn this off. Problem is, you'll have to find a way to around this barrier curtain. You did call it a barrier curtain, right Lyra? She asked the Asari at her back. They had been talking about it a few days back. She nodded, losing her scowl. Yes. The defense can't be shut off from the outside. All right, then we'll find our own way in, the Turian declared. Be careful. There is a Krogan with the Geth, she cautioned them. They've been trying different ways to get past the barrier. Don't worry, we'll be right back, the blonde human assured. He paused and looked at them for a moment before turning around. I'm not going to say it. Lyra watched confusedly as he made his way over to the ramp. Say what? She asked. The others followed the blonde once he started walking. Only the Krogan stayed behind. He looked them for a long moment. If he's not going to say it, I will, he said to himself, an amused smirk coming onto his lips. Say what? The Asari repeated. Just hang tight, he said with a grin before following the others. Behind her, Maya groaned. They came under fire again just as they had hit the bottom of the ramp. There had been a few Geth near the entry of the dig site, not to mention a couple of drones near the second elevator, and since Lyra had warned them, they now knew that they also had to deal with a Krogan. Does anyone see a way to get past that shield? Naruto asked as he went around pulling out the kunai he had used. Whether it's Prothean or not, I can't hack into the system from here, Tailai said, a little embarrassed. The barrier seems blocking whatever signals I try to send. Not to mention that I really don't know what I'm trying to hack into. Qin Misley and I have taken a look around, sir, Kaiden told the blonde as he and the hunter came back. There isn't a passageway, tunnel, or even another cave down here. Damn, he swore softly as he looked around the cavern floor. There were a few tent-like buildings propped up nearby, but that was about it. His attention wandered over to the cylinder-like object that was on top of some rocks, pointing downwards on one end. What's that? He asked, pointing at it. That's a mining laser. The archaeological team must have been using it to drill further into the ruins, Gurus told him from where he stood, keeping an eye out for any more Geth. Do you think it's still operational? I guess so. He trailed off when he looked at the machine and then at the blonde in rapid succession. Do you think it could work? It doesn't hurt to try. He looked over at the Quarian in the group. Tailai, you think you can hack this thing? If there was ever a time for her to prove that she could, now would be the time. Let me see what I can do, she said as she walked over to the console stationed next to the machine, her Omni tool flickering into life. She began tapping on it, concentrating. Almost there, she muttered. And, I got it. The machine came to life and fired its laser at the ground it was pointing to. The entire area around them shook and rumbled as the floor gave way. As soon as it had broken through, the machine died. Oops, didn't mean to do that, she told them, sounding sheepish. It worked and we can get past that barrier, Rex told her gruffly. What's there to apologize for? Come on, let's move before something happens, Qin Maisley said as she hopped down into the hole. The others followed her. The hole led to a small hallway which then opened up into a large chamber with a large black tower-like structure in the middle of it. Attached to both the tower and the hallway was a small bridge with a console. I wonder if this will take us upwards, Ashley said as she approached the console. It came to life when she got close. After she tapped a few buttons, it went into standby mode as the bridge began to move upwards. I'd say that's a yes, Gurus remarked with a hint of sarcasm. The elevator came to a stop at the top of the tower. They turned around and saw Maya looking at them as she floated in the bubble. Nice of you lot to join us, she told them as they approached. They're here. Lyra asked, trying to look behind her. But how did they do that? Mining laser, Naruto answered simply. Oh, I see. She had actually forgotten about that machine. They had gotten stuck before they reached it. In any case, that button over there should let us out. She jerked her head to her left, indicating the console that stood there. Kaiden, do it. Not so fast, Uzumaki, Rex said, making everyone look at him. Ash had a point beforehand. He stared at the floating Asari. How do we know she's not for Seren, like her mother? I already told you, I haven't spoken to Benazia in years. She snapped, angry again. Why wouldn't they believe her? She had already told them this. Besides, I don't what she's doing with Seren and I want nothing to do with that Turian bastard. Good enough for ya? Naruto asked Rex before looking over at Kaiden. The biotic got the silent message and went towards the console, turning off the security device. The bubble disappeared and the two people inside fell to the ground. Lyra landed on her rear. Ow, that smarts, she groaned as she stood up, rubbing the hurt part. Naruto had to admit, she had a cute face and the scientist outfit she wore looked very well on her. Not to mention what she was doing didn't look bad. When he realized what he had just thought, he began to mentally curse Jiraiya. You've got to remember to land on your feet, Sheila. Maya told the Asari, having done just that. She wore a jacket over a light suit of armor and carried a pack on her back. Her gloves were fingerless and a hat rested on the top of her pack, the strings of it were tied and hung around her neck. She reached back and put her hat on. The second it was on, she got focused. Do you have any idea how to get out of this place, aside from the way we came in? Naruto asked them, being all business. I think the center of the tower back there is an elevator. Lyra pointed at the tower behind them. It should get us out of here. The Spectre nodded in thanks. Turning around, he went back to the tower and the others followed. As Qin Maisley taped keys on the console, the entire place began to rumble and shake. The laser must have caused a seismic event. The Asari said in realization. We have to hurry. Joker, get the Normandy over here, ASAP. Naruto barked into his COMM. Aye, Commander. Replied the pilot. I've locked in on your signal. ETA is 8 minutes. As the elevator began to move upwards, Lyra was still confused. Why does Seren even want me? She asked, looking at her rescuers for answers. I doubt it's because Benazia asked. If I had to guess, it's because you're a Prothean expert, Gurus told her. Seren's looking for the conduit and maybe he thought you would be the best choice. But I don't even. She was interrupted when the elevator came to a stop and locked in with the floor surrounding it. There was only one exit, which led back to the catwalks they had initially found when they entered the caves. The only problem was that it was being guarded by the Krogan they had been warned about in Geth. Surrender, the Krogan ordered. Or don't. That would be more fun. In case you haven't noticed, this place is coming apart. Naruto told him impatiently. The whole room was shaking around them. The Krogan only grinned in response. Exhilarating, isn't it? Watch it, Gaki, Kurama warned him. This guy doesn't care. Thanks for taking down those energy fields for us. The Krogan walked forward and lifted his gun, using it as a pointer. Now hand over the doctor. Sorry, she's staying with us, Rex replied, raising his shotgun. He knew what was coming next. So did the enemy Krogan. It was what he wanted. Kill them, he ordered the Geth beside him. Spare the Asari if you can. If not, it doesn't matter. The Geth moved forward, prepared to shoot. Maya, who discreetly bit one of her thumbs during the conversation, flashed through the necessary hand seals and slammed her hand onto the floor. Cookie Yos no Jutsu, summoning Jutsu. She shouted, suddenly engulfed in smoke. When the smoke dissipated, she was standing next to a creature Naruto had never seen before. What is that? He demanded. That would be a gray kangaroo wearing boxing gloves, sir, Kaiden answered. Despite sounding professional, seeing the look of surprised wonder on the blonde's face made his lips curl in a smile. The kangaroo quickly took stock of the situation. Then it looked at his summoner. It's been a while, Maya. Where the hell have you been that you're so busy you can't talk to us? It demanded. Not the time, Bobby, she told him as she unslung a rifle from her back. Lyra saw what she was doing and pulled out the pistol she had at her side. I need you to take care of that Krogan. She pointed at the enemy Krogan in question with the rifle. Right, gotcha. He didn't say anything else before leaping straight at the Krogan. One hard cross knocked the Krogan to the ground, cutting off his roar. He didn't stay down, getting back to his feet with his weapon ready. Everyone spread out. Naruto ordered as he pulled out a pair of kunai. Take care of the Geth and then focus your fire on the Krogan. Gurus and Ash, keep to the back with the sniper rifles. Biotic users, use it when you feel it. Other than that, don't die. He darted to the closet Geth and went to work. The second the battle started, Maya and Lyra stayed close together. The human targeted the Geth further away while the Asari took shots at the closer ones, especially the ones that looked like they were turning their way. It was a rough pattern that they still needed to work on, but it held for the moment. Ashley stayed close and supported them with sniper fire. Gurus did the same with Kaiden and Kuinmizli while Tailai sent the Geth viruses. Meanwhile, both Naruto and Rex had joined the kangaroo in fighting the Krogan. Their enemy didn't look frustrated at them. He actually looked excited by the fact. This is too much fun. He declared as he tried headbutting Rex. The other Krogan backpedaled away, allowing Bobby to get in a 1-2 combo in the face. He stumbled back a step and just grinned. Come on, is that all you got? Oh, just die already, Naruto muttered, going low for a kick. The Krogan saw him and aimed his gun, forcing him to back off. The Krogan followed him. He tried to shoot but had to avoid a shotgun blast from Rex. Bobby came in with a kick, knocking his gun out of his hands. The Krogan tried to hit the kangaroo, but he dodged and came back with a punch that left his arm limp. Naruto rendered his other arm limp with a paralyzing kick. How are we doing back there? He asked to the rest of the team. We're just about done. Kaiden told him as Maya shot the last Geth standing in the chest piece, making it collapse to the ground. Good, then all biotics, take care of this guy. He ordered as Rex shoved the enemy Krogan hard enough to send him stumbling back to the rail of the catwalk. Even though orange blood leaked out of the side of his mouth, he wore a bloodthirsty grin on his face. This is getting exciting. Who's next to fight me? He challenged them. He got his answer in the form of 3 separate biotics slamming into him. He flew over the rail of the catwalk and down to the cavern floor, landing with a loud splat. Everyone else went onto the catwalk and looked down at where he had landed. Bobby dismissed himself after the Krogan went flying, but not before telling Maya that the conversation wasn't over. I don't think he'll get up from that, Rex remarked drily. No one said anything in return, mostly because of the fact that the cave was still collapsing. Instead, they all broke into a dead run and headed for the entrance. Rocks fell from the ceiling all around them, some coming almost dangerously close to hitting one of them. They didn't try and focus on that because if they did, they were dead. But still, the rocks smashed into the ground below and even some landed on the catwalks. Things had been set aflame and the sound of the ruins groaning chased after them, like a giant that was dying and yet still tried to keep them. Go go go! Naruto yelled as he pushed the rest of his teammates onto the ramp that led up to the exit, mentally counting as he pushed each of their shoulders. When he was sure that was all of them, he took up the rear. As the cave collapsed behind him, he and his team ran out into the open. When they saw the Normandy waiting for them with the cargo bay door open, they didn't waste any time. Location: the Normandy. That was too close, Commander, Joker told them as they sat in the comm room. 10 more seconds and we would have been swimming in molten sulfur. The Normandy isn't equipped to land in exploding volcanoes. They tend to fry our sensors and melt our hull. Just for future references, he explained. Even though they couldn't see him, they could hear the sarcasm dripping from his voice. I'll keep that in mind, Joker, Naruto remarked drily. He was the only one who wasn't sitting in a chair, choosing to lean against the console rail. Liara saw the amusement on his face as well as the other humans. Why was that? We almost died out there and your pilot is making jokes, she said. It's a way to relieve the tension, the blonde told her. Besides, he's entitled to a few bad jokes. I see. She glanced over at Maya. I guess it's a human thing. You make it sound like that's a bad thing, Sheila, Maya said from where she lounged in her chair. Once she had gotten out of her armor, she took off her coat and her pack as well. She kept the hat, letting it on her shoulder blades. I didn't mean it like that, Maya, she hastily assured her. I just don't have a lot of experience with your species. The only experience she did have was with her. Maya smiled, letting her know it was okay. Don't worry. It's the same with me, Naruto assured her. She turned her attention back to him. I am grateful to you, Commander, she told him. You saved both of our lives. She gestured to Maya to emphasize her point. And not from the volcano either. Those Geth would have killed Maya and dragged me to Saran. Like Maya, she chose not to discuss the tribe with their rescuers. She didn't even know who or what the tribe was. Do you know something about the conduit? Kaiden asked her. All eyes turned to her as they waited for her answer. Not much, she admitted. Only that it was somehow connected to the Prothean extinction. That's my real area of expertise. She wiggled in her chair, trying to get comfortable. I have been trying to figure out what happened to them for the past 50 years. How old are you? Kyun mildly asked as she fiddled with a butterfly knife. Unlike the Aseri, she sat very comfortably in her chair. She looked down, like she was feeling embarrassed. I'm 106, she admitted. Ashley couldn't help but whistle. I hope I look that good when I'm your age, she told the Aseri with a small grin. It might seem long to you, but among Aseri, I'm hardly more than a child. She had lost count of the number of times that had been held against her. That's nothing. I'm over 2,000 years old, Naruto remarked with a grin. He didn't know why he had said that, but he felt that it needed to be said. What? She wasn't sure if she had heard him right. Long story. Very long story. A few of the team rolled their eyes at that. Some even snorted. Well, it's because of my age that my research has not gotten the attention it deserves, she explained to them. Because of my youth, other Aseri scholars tend to dismiss my theories on what happened to the Protheans. The archaeology team on Thurum was looking for something else in those ruins. She realized that a bit of an understatement. I was looking for how they disappeared. And how have you been doing with that? Talai asked her. I have heard every theory out there, but the problem is finding the evidence to support them. The Protheans left remarkably little behind. It's like someone wiped out the clues in the galaxy after they had vanished. But the thing is that according to my findings, the Protheans were the first galactic civilization to mysteriously vanish. The cycle began long before then. What makes you say that? Gurus asked her. I've been working on this for 50 years, she told the Turian sitting next to her. I have tracked down every scrap and shred of evidence. Eventually, subtle patterns start to emerge, patterns that hint at the truth. But I can't point out one specific thing to prove my case. It's more a feeling derived from a half-century of dedicated research. So, you're not sure? Kaiden clarified. She shook her head. No, I know I'm right and I know I'll eventually prove it. There were other civilizations before the Protheans. This cycle has repeated itself many times over. This was the first Maya had heard about this. When they had talked, bonded as friends, they never really got into why Lyra was an archaeologist. She was interested. Then who came first, Sheila? She asked her. I don't know. There is barely any evidence on the Protheans, even less on those who came before them. But every time a great civilization rises up over the years, it is suddenly and violently cast down. Only ruins survive. The Protheans rose from a single planet until their empire spanned the entire galaxy. Yet even they climbed to the top on the remains of those who came before. Their greatest achievements, the mass relays and the Citadel, are based on technology of those who came before them. And then, they all just disappear, right? Naruto summarized. She nodded in agreement. I have dedicated my life to figuring out why. Well, he could give her an answer. They were wiped by the Reapers, sentient machines, he told her. She was surprised by his words. Nothing in her research suggested even the slightest notion of that ever happening. How do you this? She demanded. What evidence do you have? There was a Prothean beacon on Eden Prime. It was damaged, but it still burned a vision into my head. She considered that possibility. As she thought it over, she started nodding. Yes, that makes sense. The beacons were designed to transmit information directly into the mind of the user. Finding one that still works is extremely rare. She had come across many beacons that were non-functional during those 50 years. It's no wonder the Geth attacked Eden Prime. The chance to acquire a working Prothean beacon, even if it was badly damaged, is worth almost any risk. But they were only programmed to interact with Prothean physiology. Whatever information you received would have been confused or unclear. Well, that explains a lot, Isabure remarked from inside Naruto. I am amazed that you were able to make sense of it at all, she told the Spectre. A lesser mind would have been utterly destroyed by the process. You must be remarkably strong-willed, Commander. The others in the room, aside from Maya, stifled snorts and sniggers when she said that. Did I say something funny? She asked, confused. Let's just go with what you said for now, Huan Misley said to her. In any case, this isn't helping us find Seren or the conduit, Ashley pointed out. Sorry, my scientific curiosity got the better of me, Lyra apologized. But I don't have any information that could help find the conduit, or Seren. Still, it's probably best if you stick with us, Naruto told her. Thank you, Commander. She stood up from her chair. My knowledge of the Protheans could be useful later on. Not mention her biotics will be handy when the fighting starts, Rex commented. He had seen her in the fight. Her gunnerk was a little shoddy but nothing some work could improve upon. But her biotics were top-notch. Then that means I'm staying too, Maya declared from her chair. It'll be good to have both of you on board, Naruto assured them with a warm smile. They returned the smile, until the one Lyra had faltered and she placed her hand on her forehead. Lyra, are you all right? He asked, concerned. I'm feeling a bit lightheaded, she admitted. Maya was out of her chair in a flash and by the Asari's side. We should let the medical examiner take a look at you. It's been some time since we ate or slept, she said. It's just mental exhaustion, coupled with the knowledge of the Protheans' true fate, she replied. I just need time to process all this. Even so, you're getting looked at by the medical examiner. Out of everyone who had been on Thurum, Lyra had been the most driven. Which meant she could easily work herself to exhaustion. What they had been through didn't discount that fact. Lyra knew that Maya was right, thinking back to the time she had to practically carry her out of the ruins. I guess it wouldn't hurt, she conceded. She turned back to Naruto. Are we done here, Commander? Yeah, we'll talk after you're settled in and Dr. Shakwas has taken a look at you. He looked at the rest of his team. Everyone else is dismissed. They all stood up and walked out of the comm room. Mission reports are filed, Commander, Joker said through the comm as they left. You want me to patch you through to the council? Might as well. So, was he serious when he said that he was over 2,000 years old? Lyra asked as they went through the door. Have you read much human history? Taylai asked in return. She shook her head. I'll give you my book. I'm almost done with it. I'm setting up the link now, Commander, Joker told Naruto as the door to the comm room closed behind him. As he faced the wall that had the screen, the 3 holograms of the council appeared before his eyes. We've received your report, Commander, Tavos began without preamble. I understand that Dr. T. Sony is aboard the Normandy. I assume you're taking the necessary security precautions. Spiratus asked him. There's nothing to worry about with that, she's on our side, he replied with ease. The Geth were trying to take her to Seren, and if that didn't work, kill her. Benazia would never allow Seren to kill her daughter, Tavos objected. Maybe she doesn't know. Valerne suggested. Or maybe we don't know her, Spiratus replied. We never expected she would become a traitor. Well, at least the mission was a success. Apart from the utter destruction of a major Prothean ruin, he retorted before throwing an accusatory glare at Naruto. Was that really necessary, Uzumaki? I went in there to retrieve a possible hostage and a possible source of information, not preserve a cave, he replied with a glare of his own. Just be glad I didn't intentionally destroy the place to kill the Geth in there. Of course, Commander, the mission must always take priority, Valerne agreed. Good luck, Commander, Tavos said to him. Remember, we're all counting on you. And with that, the holograms faded away. The Turian sure is grouchy, Kokuo commented as Naruto around and headed for the door. I wonder if that's just normal for him or it's because of you. At this point, Kokuo, I really don't care. I still gotta figure how to properly do that email crap, he replied. The modern world relies on that crap and so you do too, Saiken reminded him. I know. Trust me, I know. When the door to the rest of the ship opened, he paused as he remembered something. Hey Joker, you picked up the Mako, right? He asked aloud. That's affirmative, Commander, Joker replied. I did that just before picking up you guys. Why did you want no? Because I plan to make sure Qin Lee never drives again. I don't think I'd be able to live through another round of that, he answered as he continued walking through the door, it automatically closing behind him. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.